And now, Kyle and Steven present another episode of the Go F Yourself podcast. It's Fix. Really? Well, that's embarrassing.
The Go Fix Yourself podcast.
Welcome to the Go Fix Yourself podcast, where we like to say that we're fixing the way we view the world one conversation at a time. Nailed it.
Yeah, I was just saying,
Well
for
done.
the people just joining, we did redo that intro.
No, it was
Yeah,
perfect.
But that's the funny thing. We have this like new catchphrase, right? Fixing the world one fixing the world one conversation at a time. We're getting confused. We're getting ahead of ourselves. But yeah, we're still struggling with it.
We got a new catchphrase. We're sticking to it. Sitting next to me, as always, is Stevel Knievel.
Oh, thank you.
Steven
That was
Cornfield.
my Xbox gamer name.
I know. How could you pass
Yeah.
that up? And sitting across from us is none other top 40 hunkiest firefighters in the U.S.
What?
Don't fact check me on that.
Oh, I was going to say.
Twice voted.
That's some wicked
Dude, I just
editorialization right
believe.
there.
I know.
I'm like, what is he talking about?
I'm choosing to believe.
Andre Horton. Welcome to the podcast, my
Welcome,
friend.
Gentlemen,
man.
nice to be here.
Yeah, we decided to have you on. I go through my Facebook messages. I'm like, this is the perfect guy to have on the podcast. He's done so many things in his life. I go back to Facebook messages. 2010, I think, is roughly around the first Facebook message I sent you about.
Wow, 13 years?
Yeah. And then before that,
2010. What were you guys talking about back then? You
Yeah.
weren't that cool.
I was zero cool.
Neither one
I
of us
said,
were cool. I don't-
Nobody was cool back then.
I am looking to pay somebody to take pictures of my band.
A lot of
Oh.
denim. A lot of denim, I think.
Yeah.
Or was that was late 90s? Sorry.
Yeah, I had the swoopy hair, all that stuff. So
I had
well,
dreadlocks, I think. But
dreadlocks
Did you?
at the
I
time?
didn't. No, I don't know if I was 2010.
What we like to say is with the podcast, his parents listen to every single
Yeah.
episode. They are our biggest fan.
Rick and Carol in
Rick and
upstate
Carol.
New York. They listen to the podcast, but they don't know the people that we know up here. And so basically how it started was like, my mom was like, oh, that was a great guest you had on. I didn't know anything about them. And I'm like, you don't know anybody on this podcast.
You're not
Well, you
supposed
don't
to.
know anybody.
Yeah, I said on this podcast. Okay, she's listening right now and being like,
Love you, Carol.
boy. Anyway, so yeah, tell her and my dad who you are and what you do right now. And then we'll get into
what
the
were their
nitty-gritty.
names again? We gotta
Rick and Carol.
Rick and Carol.
Perfect. Dude, that was your like voiceover voice.
I know. Rick and Carol.
Rick and Carol.
Rick and Carol, greetings tonight. They're not going to hear us back. What do I do right now? People ask me what I do, and it's I've never been one of those people where what I do defines me very well. So what I do sometimes is an accident. So I fell into being a firefighter. And it wasn't because I was a kid, when you're little, like, I want to be a firefighter when I get older. Nope. It was something that I fell into at 39, the age of
Interesting.
39. Like, I had gray hairs.
Your
all
prime
over.
years.
That's what I hear.
Yeah.
I had gray shoulder hair I found like the week of the test. I'm like putting a tank top on for the first time in a decade. And I'm like, oh my goodness, is that gray shoulder hair? Like, if you get gray shoulder hair, that means,
Yeah, that's
You're going to be a silver fox.
yeah.
you got
quick.
salt and pepper
Quick.
everywhere. Yeah.
And I was at a prior job, and I was telling you guys prior to the show starting that it was a weird week. And so I had one of my peers, he's like, hey, you should try out for the fire department, man. And I was like, that is for 20-year-olds with no neck.
Yeah.
Like the CrossFit dudes that just like put
I can pick up people.
Yeah, they have
all the time.
creatine all the time and whey shakes and
Yeah.
stuff. Anyway, nevertheless, I applied for the Anchorage Fire Department and went through their entire process. And what I was telling you is when you go through any kind of interview process and you don't have to do it, but you're just kind of doing it for the fun of it, there's no stress. You're not even pressured to like answer correctly. You get editorialized. So I went through their entire process and got hired at 39. And I was like, wait till they find out that I'm 39.
You were just like, let's see what happens.
Yeah, it
We
was
need to bring
exactly-
in the AFD. We need to talk
Right.
to them.
Yeah, bring them in. And then I didn't tell my wife until I got
wow.
Yeah. She's like, why are there so many sweaty clothes in here? And I was like, I did this physical test where I thought I was going to die. But I rested on my laurels from my previous life as a professional athlete and made it through the test. I was enjoying myself every single step because there's like 20 things you have to do to get hired. And there's usually thousands of people trying to get hired. In this case, there's only several hundred.
Yeah.
But,
So it's like a
Up in
class,
Anchorage.
and then
Yeah,
certain
class.
few get
Right.
picked, right?
yeah.
So
So
you climbing walls like
you had
with
to
rope,
you had to carry chainsaws around and like
Oh.
do this crazy stuff. I was having fun.
Yeah, I mean,
Literally,
that does sound
I
kind
was
of
like,
fun,
all right,
actually.
but
We
then they're
should
done-
try out.
I don't know if we should.
You should. I
I
tell
don't
everybody,
think we should.
You know, obviously I'm an outspoken.
They're gonna like give me a
Advocate for
chainsaw
it
and be
now.
like, actually, you know what? On second thought, I
Like,
think you should just go.
I
You're
think
a
he
little too
started the
excited.
fire.
Yeah.
He started
He
it.
started just to have us show up.
I'm not so sure you should be here, sir.
I've got some stories about. Anyway, people's doing things just for us to show up is interesting. But nevertheless, I am a firefighter now.
curious now.
I know, right?
Sorry,
and
sorry.
then I got assigned to this station where it's the water rescue station. So like, Horton, you got to learn how to dive. I'm like, is that
Oh.
underwater? And they're
Yeah.
like, yeah, you got to dive. I'm like, look at me. How many black people do you know in the state of Alaska dive? And they're like, we don't know any of them. I'm
You
like,
barely know any divers, period.
You're the first.
yeah, you're the first. And then I was like, I usually go swimming like at the lake. I swim
Yeah.
to where the dock is, where the beer is.
Yeah.
And that's as far as I get.
Me too.
Right.
They're
Me
like, no, you got to be
Swim
on
to
the dive team,
The
bro.
jet ski.
So anyway, the last couple of years have been interesting. I've been there 4 years now, and then I was on the dive team, so I had to learn how to dive. I didn't know.
Why did so you're like if someone's drowning
Underwater fire.
Yeah, underwater fire. That's what I was like, yeah.
I'm like, why would you need to learn how to dive? What is that like?
Well, there's like all these special teams for all the different stations around Alaska. or in Anchorage.
Submarine?
Yeah, there's some people that the station I'm at now we sew. We're like the seamstresses.
Oh,
And like I didn't even know that. You go over there,
That's
there's
one
this
of your
huge
skill
table
sets?
of sewing machines, and they're like, okay, you're gonna sew now, Horton. Yeah.
What? Are you kidding?
Yeah, mind
That's so
blown.
cool.
Like, so I was over there making tool pouches and just screwing around.
well, that's kind of cool. That's a useful
I
skill.
would say that's
Yeah.
super useful.
Yeah, that's what I said. But these sewing machines, like, you could sew your hand closed. Like,
Yeah.
and they let you go in there willy
This
nilly.
is worse than the field.
Yeah, like just put the pressure on the pedal and sew. I'm like, okay. But I digress. Before that, they were just, you got to learn how to dive and do water
Interesting.
rescue. So we run boats and jet skis in the Turnagain Arm. And then if there's, there used to do ice rescue, which was, I thought, terrifying.
For sure.
You jump in the little hole. And you can't, it's dark down there.
You were cold plunging before it was cool.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
And then they didn't tell you this either. Is like everywhere in Alaska, or at least Anchorage, where we do these rescues, it is dark.
Right.
Like,
Oh, I bet.
So you jump
Yeah.
down in there, it's murky. Like there's lakes in Anchorage I've jumped into. I'm like,
Oh, yeah. Goose Lake
yeah,
is,
Goose Lake. There's shopping carts and tires and all kinds of stuff in there.
I'm sure.
But nevertheless, that's what we do.
Wow.
So that's, I guess, the interesting thing about you is why I was kind of drawn to having you on is because I think of when we first officially met was UAA.
Mhm.
And we met.
Oh wow, you guys do go back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
Oh,
met
wow.
through, and we have this joke from a podcast with Mac that all roads lead to me.
Yeah.
But I truly
Yeah.
believe
Yeah.
all
I
roads
thought it was
lead.
okay. You know,
Yeah,
yeah,
all
yeah.
roads lead to Jason Klein to some
Oh,
extent.
yeah,
They do.
Okay, that's true.
It's there's
That's true.
it's
He's like
leaves
the
and
Kevin Bacon of
yeah, 6
7
degrees.
degrees.
Yeah.
What is
He's
it?
like
6
the
degrees.
Kevin
of
Bacon
Jason
of
Klein.
Anchorage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so kind of walk us through like what were you doing at college? Obviously it was not a foresight of going into firefighting or anything like that. You had different visions at this time and your life is kind of weaved through a bunch of different ways. I know skiing's involved and all that stuff. So take us back to kind of around that time period.
My
And-
formative years is
yeah.
Yes,
like,
please.
a collegiate. I think you make a good point. Like I swear, like I make this analogy with people about my rear view mirror and my windshield. And in this season of my life, sometimes the rear view mirror is just daunting because of the things I've already accomplished and done. So you look out your windshield, you're like, really?
Yeah,
Like,
this is what's ahead
What?
of me.
You know, like, and you're in your 40s. Before you know it, you're going to be ancient. But where I'm going with that is just like looking back, everything has correlated and worked out mysteriously awesome. Right?
Yeah.
But I can't look at my windshield and be like, oh, this is what's going to happen. I don't know. But with that, UAA, I was what do they call us? Non-traditional students. There's lots of them at UAA, I guess.
Right.
And prior to going to UAA, I had retired from the national ski team. And let me see here. Because I went to Stellar. You guys know that? That's the crazy school that people, they get Stellar and a bunch of different schools. Anyway, I went to Stellar and then I left Stellar to do what they call a postgraduate year, which also people think is just ski bumming, right? Because like, I'm going to go.
But is it?
Hell yeah.
I'm going to go live in Wyoming, which was crazy because like, you're black. I'm like, I know, but I'm going to go live in Wilson, Wyoming on this farm road and live in a log cabin. in Wilson, Wyoming. No joke. And I went there strategically, though. Everyone thinks it's a joke because I did have a white Bronco, by the way.
Oh, man.
in
Just
Wilson,
add
Wyoming.
into the
Just
vibe.
Would you
adding
just
to it.
fly down the highway?
Yeah.
Just 30 miles an
I drove
I love
into
it.
Boise up over the Teton Pass in a white Bronco into Wilson, Wyoming. And there's a good analogy for this later, but I walk into the post office. I'm like, hey, y'all. And you could hear a pin drop
I'm sure.
because I was checking my post office box from
Right,
Wilson,
yeah.
Wyoming. Anyway, where I'm going with that is I spent 2 years in Wilson, Wyoming because there was really good skiers there, and I wanted to be a better skier. And iron sharpens iron.
Yeah.
So there was 12 of us post-grad ski bums, and we'd get up at 6 a.m. and lift and have a lot of whey and chicken breasts and all that, right?
And creatine.
Creatine,
obviously.
yeah.
A lot of creatine,
You
drink
have
a gallon
to.
of water.
Right.
You know, we'd carry those big jugs around. Like, it's just,
You'd have
anyway.
been kicked out of Planet Fitness in a
Yeah,
heartbeat.
way too grunt, like just dropping weights,
Yeah.
just hang cleans and lifts and snatches. Anyway, after 2 years there, I made the national ski team. Like half of us made a D1 roster and half of us made the national team.
Which
was
which
crazy.
one's
That's-
technically better?
Well, it depends on your route.
Right.
Like D1's
One's college
awesome,
and
one's
one's-
college and one's the national sports team.
Right.
So I was
Yeah.
like, I was always wanted to make the national sports team because I was like this chubby little black kid from Alaska. I'm like, I want to make the ski team. And because my parents are both school teachers.
Okay,
So
yeah.
like demographically, that's impossible
Sure.
because school teachers don't make enough to support such an expensive sport.
Yeah.
And people
same.
don't
Very
realize
expensive.
how expensive skiing
Ridiculous.
is because
Yeah.
I've talked to several people that are on ski teams of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
And how much roughly would you say, because you have to have several sets of skis, how much are you talking price range for skis? I mean, it's like thousands. I mean,
Yeah, make a good pair of race skis is $1,000.
right. And so you have to have several sets, right?
Yeah,
Typically?
I was like one of those hobos.
Right.
Like I had like
You
one
had
pair
one.
for like multiple events.
Your ride or dies.
Yeah, ride or dies. Like these are way too long for
Better
this
not
race.
break. Better not break.
I'm gonna make it.
Or I'll
I'm gonna
die.
make it. Damn it. And people would laugh at me because I'd show up with like 3 pairs of skis. They're like, "These are all you got," but I tuned them myself. I
Right.
didn't have my-
Really? They would
yeah.
laugh at you.
Oh, come on. I was like like already I would laugh at myself if I saw me back then. 'Cause,
Sure.
Like first off, I was 225.
Oh.
6% body fat.
Let's go.
Right.
Let's
you know what I
go.
mean? And I'd show up in a down spandex with
Okay.
3 pairs of skis, and everyone else would be like 180 pounds, 20 pairs
nice.
of skis.
So you're just breaking all the stereotypes.
Yeah, all the stereotypes. Like, do you see that black dude? You know, and
Yes.
I could squat like four plates for 20 reps. Like I was just used to like
A little flex.
lifting, right?
Little
Yeah.
flex. I
My
like
knees
it.
hurt now.
You're built
My knees
different.
hurt to this day from that. But anyway,
Yeah.
so where I was going with this was like I was an outlier. Making the national team, I was there for 6 years. Skied all over the world. Like I skied 200 days a year.
That's
oh my
awesome.
gosh.
Yeah. And
Best place you skied.
I would on a.
You can spill the beans.
Let's lie.
Okay.
Well, no, we won't lie.
I was like, why are we lying? Why are we lying?
Like this place called Miyako, Japan.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, you
No,
went.
oh yeah, I went that way.
Okay. I like it.
Something about we're gonna get a lot of flack for this. Something about the Shinto religion, I think, is something about how the trees are sacred.
Right.
Me being an arrogant American, I'm like, we got dumped on. And all these people are skiing in these tight little lanes. I'm like, man, no one's skiing in the trees. And I just skied off to run into the trees. No one said anything.
Right. But you're not supposed to there.
I think so.
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
But
okay.
it was the deepest, nicest powder I've ever seen in my life.
Okay.
Ski patrol wasn't probably going to
Yeah.
mess with you.
Yeah, they
because
were.
you were twice as
Yeah,
big
and I
as
had
them.
dreadlocks then when
Yeah.
I was in Mexico.
No
Or,
one's screwing with a guy with dreadlocks.
and I was like a foot taller than everybody. So like Japan's awesome. South America's good. Like Chile.
Yeah.
Oh, I bet.
Las Leñas.
I bet.
There's a place called Portillo. No joke. They have a ski lift that runs off of an old D8 diesel engine.
Okay.
And they shift gears
While you're
while you're going.
Manually?
Yeah. Like, okay.
Okay.
And you're like, man, we are dropping gears. And it's only like a one person lift. And they take you up this avalanche chute, and you can hear it slowing down. And it's literally like a bar that has like a piece of chain on it you all hold on to. There's 5 of us, you can go up at once.
Oh, man.
And it's called a roca jack. And they still have it to this day.
What an experience.
Right. That's what I
crazy.
said.
Yeah.
And it's straight up, and it's like there's no lifts, it's just cables.
I might. That would probably be like, you know what, guys? I think I'm going to stay down here.
Yeah.
See ya. You
up
guys,
an avalanche.
you guys go
and
up
there's
there.
like this huge lake you're on, and they only sell so many tickets per day.
Oh. So it's like very exclusive almost.
Yeah, but it's like, and then it's right on the Argentina and Chilean border.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's at 12,000 feet. That's what does suck.
oh.
Because you're like, man, I'm out of shape. I'm like, oh, I forgot I'm at 12,000
Yeah.
feet.
I've never been that high.
Skiing with altitude sickness sounds not fun though, too.
Well, we had traveled with doctors.
Okay.
And they'd weigh us and they'd take
wow.
blood samples, and we had to spin on bikes with oxygen to get our oxygen back
to-
up. They'd test our lactate.
Jeez.
Damn. So what was it like being in like the national ski team? Well, first, I'm getting ahead because I'm excited.
Oh,
but like, how did you get into the national ski team?
Well, it's based on like a criteria. So they're like, you got to be ranked this and then ranked this. And then, so you're based on your world rankings. So I had to be ranked at one point, like in the top 250 in all events in the world, right? And then to make the national Alpine team, you had to be top 60 or top 90 in a certain event, or win the national championships, or win a NORAM Cup, or have a combination of, or aggregate of points.
Right. So like a season-long thing.
Yeah.
Right.
So at the end of the season, you're like, well, where you're at with your rankings? And when I retired, I had like 18 or 19 downhill points and 20 Super G points, which basically means like if there was 50 people in the world, you'd be in that top 50.
Right. Oh, shit.
Which would qualify you for the national team.
Oh, shit.
And that's in the world. But then in the United States, that's, top handful, top 3, top 5.
Damn.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you showed up, like people knew who you were for the most part then, right? If you're in that kind of upper echelon, people be like, there's that dude.
Well, I mean, there was like the Bodie Millers, the Darren Rolfs, the Tommy Moes. And I always laugh at this even within the grand scheme of your guys' podcast. If you think about it, for every like Bodie Miller, for every Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, there's hundreds of thousands of people that were like
just under.
Right. So I'd always joke like I got top 6, and people were like, I think that means you got 6th place, or like top 11,
right?
Top 21.
I like how you add the word top, because that's like that's ultimately cooler.
Because I used to joke with my buddies, I got top 7, and I think that means you got 7th.
That's a weird way to say 7th place.
Yes,
no, I like it. I like it. I like it. You know,
the joke
what?
is like
build yourself up.
It takes a lot of people to get to that upper echelon.
I would imagine.
Yeah. So if it's someone like me, I people will ask if later on we get into talking about DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion, and like what that is in modern times. People constantly ask me like, why aren't there more Black Americans skiing? And my response is like, for every one Andre Horton, you have to have maybe 3,000 black kids at the age of 16 wanting to do it.
Yeah.
Full-time
training.
Blah, blah, blah.
And right now we have 30.
Yeah.
So like I'm an outlier, like quadruple outlier. And I've always been a nerd when it comes to people asking me about any type of occupation I do. So like getting hired at the fire department, I think it was like a 3.5% chance of getting hired. Making the national ski team, there's another percentage that I never even dealt with.
Yeah, I'm sure it's.
But I mean, to answer your question originally, though, it's just like it's a ranking system to get there, and then you have to maintain your rankings to stay there.
Okay.
And then you move around a lot, so you'll be on a development team because you're like kind of doing okay, and then you have a couple training sessions where you're Pete Bodie. Then these guys get really upset. And I think, and just in that segue, there was a really cool sports psychologist that was way too expensive for me, but he was paid for by the U.S. Olympic Committee that traveled with this. And I was always struggling psychologically as an athlete, seeing how I was in like Tommy Moe's shadow or Bodie Miller's shadow. And these guys are winning World Cups, crushing it, making millions of dollars. They go to the bars with all the hot ladies. And then I'm, you're the 4th place. And then
top 4.
Yeah, top 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then he'd ask me at one point, he's like, well, Andre, what's the difference between you and Bodie or you and Darren Rolfs? Do you train any less than they do? Do you work harder or less than they do? I'm like, no, I actually work harder than they do because I'm trying to be competitive.
Yeah.
So then he came about this idea. He said, Horton, essentially, like, you have to consider yourself a world-class athlete and take nothing less. And I'm like, well, I'm not really world-class. He's like, well, why not? I was like, well, I don't win World Cups. He's like, but you work just as hard as everybody who does. And I was like, all right. He's like, start considering yourself a world-class athlete and it'll change your perspective, right? So I started changing my perspective and I started skiing faster.
That guy does not charge enough.
Yeah, right. And it's just
That's
it's like a little brain, it's like a little nugget, right?
Switching how you look at stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. To like, or what's the difference between this podcast and the world-renowned podcast of whatever the most famous podcast is?
Absolutely nothing, Andre.
Absolutely nothing. But I mean, your passion and your eagerness to be here and to find cool people to be on the is no different.
Right.
Right. I mean, there's millions and millions of dollars of difference when it comes to the outcome of it.
Right.
But your passion for being here, like, is world class. So if you have that perspective,
World class podcasters.
Heard it here first, everybody.
But it's just easy for everyone to like put themselves in this category. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. And, and this goes back to even our UAA days, which is the question is like, I took a test in grade school that put me like, an inch away from the short bus, so to speak.
Right.
Nothing against short buses, but I was that challenged as a kid learning. And they're like, he's not going to graduate high school if he tries. And that's what my parents were told.
Really?
As educators, that's hard to hear, right?
Yeah.
Truth be told, at UAA, I mean, we went on and got our master's degrees, and we were cum laude, and like we achieved things that people told us we couldn't.
So why do you think that was? In terms of barely passing stuff to, do you think you just did not care about school at that time? Like that was not a priority? Is that why you feel like you didn't like pass stuff, or did you feel like you actually struggled with learning at that time?
Much like my life now, I was a square peg.
Right.
And they're like, oh, here's a round hole. Fit it.
Yeah.
And
doing
like
stuff different.
Yeah. And even what's funny now is being a parent going like 20, 30 years later, I see my kids struggle with the same thing. And I'm like, you know what? Our entire society says this is how you're supposed to learn.
Yeah.
And if you don't fit this mold, then you're not going to be successful. And I'm like, no. You have to be patient. So like my daughter's she's a tween. And she's in junior high. She's like, oh, I'm worried about this. And then there's boys. And then there's, I stink. And then, I'm like, oh, it's puberty. And then she's like, Dad, can I catch puberty? Like it's COVID. And I'm like, well, anyway.
Sort of.
But I had to go through these processes and joke with her about it. It's just junior high. Junior high is horrible for everyone.
Yeah.
But these seasons you go through, like you will survive and you move on. But I think it's just hard for people to think that they have to fit.
Right.
And I've never fit in anything, ever.
Yeah. I feel like just personally, I think of like having a teenager in the house, same idea. You're dealing with a lot of things going on and you try to put yourself in their shoes at that age. And I'm like, I've told many people this, that I feel like I didn't even wake up and become a person per se until about 24. Like it's weird. Like anything before 24 was like autopilot, almost like the movie Click. Yeah. Like I fast forwarded and I was doing.
Right. That's truth.
God, that movie gets me.
I know. And then
Man, so heartbreaking.
Before I know it, I'm 24. I graduated. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I thought I was going to be a millionaire next year because that was obviously on my goals. And no one gave me $1 million yet. So I'm probably not going to make it in the next 12 months. Yeah. So it's just like, I try to have a little bit of humility when I'm looking at a kid that's like, oh, school's tough. And I'm like, man, you don't even know when you're, you have so much ahead of you that try to realize that not to be so hard, but that you're right. There is like a stigma that your kids should be smart and get straight A's and do all these things that I think is just peer pressure from other parents of, my kid is, whatever. And so it's a struggle. Like I said, I didn't even wake up and become a human being until 24, I think. And it's kind of sad.
Well,
some of us are late bloomers.
Yeah. Well, I had this, I went to a lot of counseling. People are like, why? I'm like, because I actually liked going to counselors. I'd ask them if I'm crazy and go through these cathartic ideas. Okay. And he says, no one's going to take you seriously till you're 40. And I was just like mesmerized by that. I'm like, what do you mean no one's going to take me seriously till I'm 40? Lo and behold, when I turned 40, I figured out why. It's just like, you're in a rush to grow and be who you are.
Right.
And 40 is just this arbitrary number that's like, oh, here you are, you're 40. But it's that moment, like, I like a lot of Mike Rowe. And he has this thing where he calls it his peripatetic moment, where it's like the aha moment.
Sure.
Where it's like, I see my kids growing. I see everything I've failed at. And like, I had to go through all that, or go through that, not around it, to be where I'm at. Yeah. And lo and behold, I work at a job that requires a GED and no criminal record. But I have a master's degree and 20 years of life experience. Yeah. But I wouldn't give the job up for anything because I enjoy it so much because of my quality of life. And when I started working where I'm working now, I lost 70% of my income. Yeah. That's how much of a pay cut I was doing my entrepreneurial stuff before that.
Oh, wow.
So then you're like, why would you give that up? Happiness.
Sure.
And like I had making plenty of money. The problem is like I didn't have time to spend it or time to sit down and just be like, this is nice.
Be happy for
to be happy where I'm at.
Yeah.
So this whole 40 thing was like, maybe they call this a midlife crisis.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Because I think we're pushed to like want to be successful and be millionaires and and at some point you realize you're like, well, I'm not gonna be that, or I'm gonna be that later. But it's okay to just marinate in the season we're in now.
Sure.
That was probably like one of my greatest lessons was just like, it's okay to just be right now.
I love that. I love that, like, you know, you're open about talking about this stuff too, because I feel like a lot of people, we don't talk about this shit.
Oh, yeah,
where it's like
terrifying.
My uncle, you know, because I was like in my early 20s and I was like, I have no idea what I want to do. And he was like, he's like, your generation was like told like you guys had to have it all figured out by 20, 24. Like be married, have kids, you know, you're in a job.
Get a good pension.
Right.
Get a good pension.
And he's like, I'm giving you guys like, he didn't say it like this. He's not giving it to us, but like, he's basically saying like till 30, like that's how long you have to figure it out.
Right.
Have fun, like enjoy it. And then it's still like, once you maybe have it figured out, once you're on that line, I mean, it doesn't have to be 30, it can be 50, it can be 60, it can be 80. But like, you know, then you start to kind of like navigate that a little bit and kind of work through those.
You're wiser.
Yeah. And you work through those like mental barriers, like you're saying, and like you find out about that, you know, enjoying where you were.
Yeah.
Like, and that's the thing. I'm like, I look back in 20s, I look back at cutting caliber and business stuff, and I'm like, I just want to be a millionaire by the time I'm 30, and you just go. But I'm like, damn, I wish I would have just been in that moment and just enjoyed like building and creating that giant empire that we created. You know, it's just like how giant or small it was, but just like being like, I'm enjoying that. And I think it's funny because it's just been on my mind recently too. And so that's so cool that you're also open about talking about this stuff. And I love that.
We get pushed past those moments where we like, and I don't know your guys' background, at least how I was raised, like Christian was like this whole idea. I mean, some people are like, what kind of podcast is this going to turn into?
No,
it can turn into whatever.
That is one of our like main topics because we both grew up Christian too.
Oh, okay. Because they always talked about the Sabbath and rest. And I'm like, what is that? I mean, come on. Is that only Sundays? And we're talking about blue laws now. You can't have booze on Sunday. And where I'm going with this is like this idea of rest took me a while to figure out.
Sure.
And who was I? I was just down in Central Oregon talking to a friend I haven't seen in almost 10 years. Anyway, he runs this huge manufacturing company, and he looked at me, he looked super stressed, but his building is twice the size it was I saw him last time. I pulled him aside. I was like, you know what? You are going to look back and regret how successful you could have been because you didn't take time to recognize the win you are succeeding at right now. And that's rest.
And you need a nap.
Yeah, you need a nap.
Yeah.
And so for you guys to know, like when I was a kid, they say on the seventh day God rested.
Right.
And I was like, why would the creator of the earth need to rest?
Yeah.
And I could never figure that out
Creatine.
until like,
He didn't make creatine yet.
yeah, he didn't make creatine and weight shakes. Right? And then I recognized like it was this moment of recognition of what you've accomplished.
Right.
Where you can sit back and be like, oh, okay.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. This looks pretty cool. I created all this whole universe.
Yeah.
So that's the idea of rest. Whatever your spiritual background is like we don't rest.
Right.
So it's the hustle, it's the constant thing, and nothing's ever good enough. Where if you actually just force yourself to stop for a second, you're like, you know, this is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Just takes time to like go full circle.
Yeah. And then even to add on top of that, just be proud of yourself for where you are. Because I think you can look back and be like, well, like for me, right, I did like the YouTube game for years, and then I still like never cracked like 700 subscribers, but I did it every week for 2 years.
Really?
Yeah. And I was that's where I was. And I for the longest time I looked back and I was like, that's a failure. I used to tell myself that. And then it wasn't until like, I don't know, it had to have been like when I got married, I was like, man, I'm proud of myself because I learned a lot. And I've been through a lot because of that. And like now I have a job, a business that I've created because of that. And so it's like, oh my gosh, I'm looking at these like all wrong. And so it's being proud of yourself, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's the one thing I'm like really like trying to enjoy and be grateful. You know how they say like, oh, wake up and write 3 things you're grateful for in your journal. And it's like, I'm like kind of still there a little bit. I'm trying to do this, but it's still being like proud of yourself for the journey.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like it took a lot to get here. You're here now, and be okay with it, whether you feel like that's success or not.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Just be proud of where you're
at. And they'd always give you that Michael Jordan thing, like he's lost more 3-pointers than he's made. And they did that.
Did he though?
Yeah, I know. They were all, you know.
I mean, everything he did was
Barry Bonds struck out more times than he could.
Yeah. The caveat
because like he was up to bat more.
Yeah. Well, these businesses that I've ran, I would used to call them failures too, because I've lost. Let me see, 3. I've left 3 businesses whether I wanted to or not. One like I had a donut operation I ran.
Dipper Donuts.
Yeah,
I remember.
And then I had an accounting firm, and then I had an advertising agency. And all those like left in, like they still exist. So like, okay. And then I'm like, they're business failures.
They still exist to this day?
Yeah. Well, the donut place
in
doesn't.
Some form?
Yeah, in some form. Like the advertising agency's crushed it. They're doing great.
No way.
And the caveat is like, I actually got sued by them when I left, even though I founded it. But then they're all my best friends now. And I wouldn't. And so where I'm going with this is like, I wouldn't give up that loss and failure and for nothing. I'd do it over again too. The donut thing, I call it the donut debacle. Like everything I learned about that, because it started with like I bought Golden Donuts, and then that failed after I bought Golden Donuts because the deal fell through, but they already had closed on it, and I already quit my job. So then I started Dipper Donuts, and that was a whole nother debacle too. Even though everyone's like, "Oh, this is great! I love these donuts. I'm getting diabetes," and we were ripping. And then
I remember
that I had to like. I got sued by my business partner to leave. And I'm like, well, this is weird. Like, can you just send me a text? You don't have to sue me for it. But nevertheless, like that was the demise of it. I just chose to leave. So I walked away from all my sweat equity and and I was like, well, I'm into this somehow. And so I got paid for that, but then I walked away. So it was depressing if you think about it. I would just walk home and just weep. Yeah, to be honest. And that was like my 3rd business where I would do that. But I like going back to what you said, I wouldn't give it up. Like, sure. It made me who I am. Yep. It would just hurt, man.
Yeah. I mean, maybe in that moment it like can suck. I can feel that. Oh, for sure. Yeah. But I mean, like it turns a corner.
Yeah.
Right.
And same thing with ski racing, for instance. Like you'd wreck hard. I blew my knee out a couple of times, concussions, broke my back, dislocated shoulders.
God, that's why I don't ski.
Yeah, and they're all like, I wish these wrecks happened at like under 70 miles an hour, but they never did.
My God.
And the best part was the video. I'd get upset at my ski coach and like, never stop filming.
Always.
Like just film the whole thing.
Oh my God.
Like, all the way into the woods. Whatever,
I love it.
The concussions. But
oh my God.
So where I was going with all this is I was actually a quick story was when I was in Deer Valley. If you guys know where Deer Valley is, Utah.
I haven't been.
You can ski through like multi-million-dollar like lawns, and it's like all the homes are inside of the ski area.
Oh,
and there's like roads underneath the ski area.
Fancy.
Very opulent. Very opulent.
Okay.
Anyway, I was on the national ski team, and I had a what they call a gold pass, which is like this little gold medallion you wear, and it's the ski pass. Oh. And there's no RFID. That you just like kind of pull back like you're Superman, and you show them the medallion, like, oh sir, go right ahead, because there's only like 1,000 of them.
Really?
Oh my God.
They had extra one. They're like, here, take this for the day. And they're $30,000. The medallion is right, and it's called a gold pass. So people like these high end individuals would buy the gold pass to sponsor the ski team, and then the ski team is like, you want to go skiing for the day, just take a gold pass. I'm like, all right. Oh. Nevertheless,
I'm going super nonchalant. Just take a gold pass.
Yeah, and it was like a little bowl. Whatever. It was like
whatever.
Because I was a little pretentious sometimes. Like, sir, we need your pass. And you're like, oh, you mean this? I only did that once. You mean this?
Yeah.
But anyway, I was riding up this lift with this guy, and I could tell he was probably loaded. Like you could just feel that. And I didn't really say anything. And I'm weird about celebrities. Like I don't like he puts his pants on the same way I do. I don't care who he is.
But his
money was falling out of his pocket.
Like bullion was falling. Like his watch. I looked at. I was like, good grief, that thing looks like it's, And so I started a conversation with him. I was like, oh, what are you doing out here? You gonna go ripping? And before I could finish, he's like, yeah, why? You want to race? Like, and he had no idea who I was, right? And I didn't take the bait
money on it
quite then. I was like, I started talking to him interpersonally, like, what are you doing out here? And come to find out, he had flown his helicopter to Deer Valley to ski for the day.
So he's got expensive taste in
so he
transportation.
flew his jet to the airport and then a helicopter to Deer Valley.
Oh my God.
And then here's the craziest disappointing part. Is like, as I find out more and more about him, like no one wanted to go with him.
He had 0 friends.
0 friends. Billionaire.
Oh.
0 friends.
Oh, buddy.
Yeah, but so I'm like, here, I'm this like ridiculously poor skier. Because I mean, that's the thing. You're just, but I was like, I promised myself I'm never going to be that guy. Like, would I give up $1 billion to have friends, and a family and relationships, or would you take $1 billion?
Ooh, that's a question.
Right? Blew my mind. And I was like 20 or 19 at the time.
Damn.
But I mean, it changed me forever.
Yeah.
Like, man, that guy's sacrificed and given up everything. And he's just sad and lonely.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
For $500 million, I'll be your friend.
Yeah, right now. Just give me just write me a check.
I'll be your friend for the day. We can do whatever.
It changed me. I was like, man,
I will leave my job right now if you write me a check.
Yeah.
Total Wolf
but
of
what
Wall
are the
Street
chances
style.
you run into whoever he was?
Yeah.
And then we get to the top. He's like, you still want to race? I'm like, sure, I'll give you a head start. He's like, I don't need a head start. I'm like, all right, suit yourself. I mean, obviously, yeah.
Yeah.
I gave him like a good 90-second head start.
Never saw him again.
Yeah. I was like, I got it.
Damn.
But I don't know, it just goes back to like that loneliness part and like doing things by yourself. But then, I wouldn't give up
What would you
relationship.
give up? Yeah.
Right.
So
Interesting.
back on track in terms of UAA, and then after that.
Oh yeah, you
kind
did
of,
ask that like
Well, like just
20 minutes ago. Sorry.
See, but that's the beauty. That's the beauty of this podcast.
Okay.
You know what? That's why I have no friends. I was
I
gonna.
know. Yeah, there was a UA question
son of
in
a
there.
bitch.
It's like, it went in there somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, the national ski team to UAA.
Oh, yeah.
At some point, you probably had to call it quits with skiing, right? Body wise, or what was it that kind of just?
Or
was,
you still skiing?
Not too. Dude, it's. I get bored skiing now.
just
I know.
Because you can't
go too fast.
I'm
broke
curious.
the sound
why?
barrier.
Yeah, because you're like,
it just sounds really pretentious, but like
No,
it's
say
like it's like inviting someone who.
show us the gold chain.
I know, like you want my pass.
I still got it.
Like it's like trying to convince a F1 driver to like go to the go-kart track.
Right. It's just not the same.
Yeah. Like I'm just people are like, hey, Andre, it dumped 18 inches. I'm like,
Interesting. Interesting.
that's not the same as Portillo or Miyako, Japan, is it?
So
Yeah.
would you say you really love skiing then? Like if you are so particular about like what you would ski,
I
like
think I got spoiled. That's the problem.
I could see that. Like with golf, like I like to play nice courses, but if you ask me to play like a terrible place, I'm like, it's still golf. I'd love to. But that's also a community thing, like
See,
where
there
I'm
you
playing
go.
with buddies and
Right.
stuff like that. So there's that aspect that's
Yeah.
a little different.
So the answer to that is also the answer to the question you just asked of like, why did I stop? I stopped because I got lonely.
Oh.
And people are, what's
lonely at the top.
Just sounds
I
so
was
bad,
gonna say.
doesn't it? Well, I think
Just making too much money.
it's like too much
were the
money.
other guy
I was
on
the other
seat.
guy in the Deer Valley with me.
Damn.
Guy. I was the one that had the helicopter.
I fight club myself. I was the guy.
Tyler Darden here. Yeah, I was the one with the helicopter. That was a whole story about me, actually. I have a helicopter here now. It's out back.
That's how we actually got here, everybody.
I saw that. Yeah.
I know. A lot of vibration.
What's going on?
This is where I'm going lonely. But where I was going with that is like, I think, I was telling my wife this the other day. I was like, let me say, there's a place it's called Hintertux, Austria. You can ride up what they call a Funatel. And a Funatel is a double cabled gondola. So there's, instead of one cable, there's two. So it can go over an entire stretch of a valley without any wind pushing it around like you're going to die.
Oh.
Because high winds are terrifying. Like the
Yeah.
only. Anyway, I rode a Funatel every morning at 6 a.m. and you can watch the sun come up. And then on a clear day at the top of Hintertux, you can look across and see the Atlas Mountains that are in Africa.
Okay.
No joke, right? And that's the kind of experience I'd have every morning.
Okay.
And like you're talking about people on Instagram wanting to have these cool pictures. Like this was pre-Instagram, obviously. But I had that experience every day.
Damn.
Right. And no one to share it with. Not that I needed that to share that on Instagram. That's not my point. It's just the fact of like sitting in this Funatel looking out this window. I'm like, man, this is cool. And then you look to your left and your right, and you're in the Funatel all by yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
And you're like, wow, this gets old, you know?
You didn't have a phone to take a
You have
picture.
a phone to share it with Instagram.
Yeah.
But I recognize you're like, man, this gets old. Doing life like this by yourself in this experience. Like I can't share it. So it's this human thing of like, why do we do things if I don't think you would do things if you couldn't share it. It's like there's always that analogy: if a tree falls in the forest, did anybody hear it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was like, well, this Funitel rides every morning. It was awesome, but I couldn't share with anybody. It was just the same 12 dudes and 12 women, which were still cool.
Right.
But it goes back to like I was still there by myself.
Yeah.
So I was like, I just got weary of that. And people are like, "What, stupid? You gave up a promising national career because you were lonely." Oh, like, you know, that's what I call navel gazing. Like you stare at your navel, you know, have a pity party. But essentially, I didn't want to spend the rest of my life having these mountaintop experiences by myself. And at the time, I was dating my present wife, like girlfriend at the time. And I was like, man, I think I'm done. Like, I want to start another chapter in my life and share these experiences. Have we gone back to Intertux? No.
I love that.
Like,
you need to go back and share that experience now, right?
So the caveat really quick to that is when I was talking to a counselor post-career, which I'm an advocate of anyone who retires from any kind of sports team or just retire in general, you should seek counseling because there's some healing that has to occur and like mourning for moving on in a different season in life. So I just quit skiing altogether. Oh. Right? I'm like, I was a little kid wanting to make the national ski team, made it, succeeded.
Your purpose.
My purpose. I crushed it.
Yeah.
First Black American ever on the national ski team. Cool, you know, resume. And then it's like you just close the binder and go to UAA as Johnny student, you know, Johnny 3015-2070 or whatever my student ID was.
Right.
No one knew who I was.
Skis in the trash can and walk right in.
Put them in the shed and shut the door. Right. All
and
37 pairs of them at the time. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. You build up from those three.
Yeah. I succeeded. Now I get around 18 pair a year.
Still?
No.
Oh.
I
thought like given sponsors.
No, every year I'd get around 18 pairs, like 6 pairs of boots, more poles than I could count.
Damn.
And like goggles, helmets, the whole thing. I mean, that was definitely a perk of like.
That's definitely,
Yeah.
For sure.
It's one of those like
that.
rock star situations where you're like, you don't know how much money they make, but they get free everything.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing that people don't understand about sports teams too is like I'd only made $15,000 a year.
Right. But everything was covered.
Yeah, I didn't pay a thing.
Yeah.
Meals, travel, like we're gonna go to New Zealand again. Okay.
Okay.
The other day I looked at going to New Zealand. I'm like, nope.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't even get to LA.
Times changed. Times have changed.
Yeah, maxed out a lot of stuff. We would go to New Zealand for weeks, South America, and then we'd be in Europe all winter, right? So your money goes a long way.
That's cool. That's cool.
But nevertheless, like that's just a career. I was like, okay, I think I'm done. You know.
And college.
What age was that?
That was 25.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 24. Right around that time that Kyle was saying like 24, 25, like trying to figure out. So it's similar.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And then I was like, I'm going to go to UA. And I appreciated the obscurity from going from like world-class athlete, like the top echelons, you know, top like national championships. I was winning the national championships at Alyeska. That was the year they had them. And I ended up getting 4th place. So that's my joke about top four.
Yeah.
And I lost by 1800ths of a second.
Wow. From 3rd place or from 1st?
Can't even count that high.
From 2nd to 4th by 1800ths of a second.
Ooh.
I mean, 1800 of seconds at like 80 miles an hour is like
nothing.
A couple inches.
Right.
Oh my god.
Which goes back to where I was talking about being a world-class athlete.
But a couple inches matter.
Yeah,
that's
I know,
what you
right?
need to. That's the name of the podcast.
Right. A couple inches matter. Every inch matters.
Yeah.
But it goes back to this whole like, I was beating Darren Rolfs and Bodie Miller at the time.
Right.
And like, so these are the best guys in the world.
Yeah.
Like Bodie Miller just had the World Cup season of, historic. So I'm not any less of a world-class athlete, but I ended up beating him at the championships, and I worked as hard as he did, but I lost by, a couple inches, literally.
Oh, man.
But it's not a big deal. It just goes back to, like believing in yourself even then.
Yeah.
But going back to UA, I appreciated the obscurity of going just into the halls of
Incognito, totally, right?
doing GERs. History 101.
They're like, sir, do you have a hall pass? And we're like, oh, fuck.
I forgot to give this back. It's like 30 grand paid for my tuition.
I have a couple of them.
And I probably could have gone to a D1 college and skied.
So why did you choose UA?
The obscurity, like you just
Just
want to
because
get
of
away
that?
from it, you know?
And
All the
some parts of me
fame.
regret, like, it would have been cool to be a D1 skier and, like, ski for
Yeah.
a college. But I was also a speed skier. Like, I did downhill and Super G and some giant slalom, where, like, college is all tech, you know, like lots of little gates and turns. I'm like, what is this turn stuff? You know, like, I was speeds of
I got the
80.
need for speed.
Damn.
Right. Yeah.
I can't even imagine going that fast on skis, dude.
It's
scary.
It's a drug.
No. It's more stable than you think.
Maybe for you.
Yeah.
Like, don't look down at your skis. They're just going all over the place.
Bro,
you know?
I was gonna say I haven't been up on any mountain because the last time I was getting off the chairlift and I just beefed it.
just wrecked.
Everybody started laughing. I went down once, struggled, right? Of course, tumbled down, and then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna be at the sits mark.
Little baby giraffe getting off there.
That's exactly what it was.
Your feet are going all over the place.
That's exactly what it was.
Do you know Chris Bryant from
yeah.
UA days? So the story was that Jason, me, Dustin, Jason might not have been there, but we all took Chris Bryant up to Alyeska for snowboarding his first time ever.
It is comical.
And we took a great basketball player for UA, great buddy of mine still. We took him up to the very, very top his first run.
No, you
Motor
fuckers,
skills
you
fail.
fuckers.
It was a real dick move.
Yeah, that's
But
awful.
we were like, we
That's
don't
what
want to
happened to
be
me.
on the magic carpet
Yeah.
of like the bunny hill for 3 hours.
Right down Trapline or Mighty Mike.
Yeah, so we went right up to the top. It was a great powder day.
Oh
and
my
he
goodness.
took.
Do you ski?
I snowboarded. I haven't in years,
Okay.
but we took him up there.
It's like
and
riding a bike.
Yeah.
Is it
And
though?
we're all having the time of our life going up and down. And he has probably gone like 200 yards because
Yeah.
he's stuck
That
in
was
the powder.
me, man.
Just
Just
started
rolling down like.
Take those skis off and just start walking
I
down.
was pizza slicing the whole way, but I was still tumbling.
So, UAA connection there as well. And he's
Yeah.
probably still up there on Alyeska trying to get down
Yeah.
a couple of years
Man,
later.
There,
Yeah,
he's still there.
That I feel that. Chris, if you're listening, I feel that because I was there and I've never been back.
We need to go again.
Yes,
Yeah.
Chris. I miss you.
Yeah. Good guy. Go to the gym with him. You gotta
Yeah.
go see him sometime.
He does this training thing.
Yeah.
and, like,
Yeah.
You guys probably have all the gym equipment you could probably have for the fire department, huh?
every station has a gym in it.
Yeah.
That's
Pretty
pretty
nice ones.
I would say so. I mean, I stopped going to Planet Fitness because I just work out at the gym at the station now.
I got you.
That's cool.
But
So-
I mean, you do have long shifts, so you gotta.
Yeah. Well,
Fill the time.
I'm gonna get into that.
Okay.
But then, so basically, you go to UA.
Mhm.
You graduate with masters.
I just kept going. You know that
Yeah.
problem. You just keep
Kept
going.
What was
Going
it? What was it that kept you going? Because you were like, you said earlier that you were like, you weren't a good student. I can relate. And I went to college, and I only went 1 year, and I was music school. I went to college for music, and I was like, fuck this. I'm
And he
out.
sucked at it.
Well, so if I went backwards,
Not
though,
very far off, Kyle. Not very far off.
I think I was a very, very, very good student. Just in some circumstances, just not intelligent by the round peg community.
Right.
Yeah.
Square peg.
You weren't a good test
weren't-
taker.
Yeah, well, right. That and my mother gave me this book when I was a kid called Leo the Late Learner, and I read it all the time because it was this. I don't tell you a story, but essentially it's like figuring out how you learn, and I couldn't do it as a kid. They're like, just read the sentence. I'm like, what sentence? I don't. It's like gibberish.
Mom, what the hell is a sentence?
Yeah, right. Is
What's
that-
a word, Mom?
And like, is this capitalized? Like, no, it's in the center. It's in the middle of the sentence. You don't capitalize that. I'm like, okay, stuff like that.
Yeah, okay. I get you.
I crossed a lot of I's, stuff like that. Like, how do you cross an I?
You were doing some crazy stuff.
Right.
That took me a second. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's like Jackson Pollock on the, for an English teacher. But so I went to UAA. I figured out like I liked school. I liked academics because I got to do it my own way. And I think that's one thing about UA that is seriously understated is like we have all these alternative lifestyle students, but I think there's enough space inside of that institution to let you kind of sculpt out your own way of learning. So when I was doing my undergrad, I was like, hey man, I want to learn entrepreneurship. Like you don't have a program for that. You have marketing and general management and finance and economics, but I was like, I want to do entrepreneurship. So they let me kind of take my own course and create curriculums towards entrepreneurship. And I knew I liked entrepreneurship because inherently I think athletes and entrepreneurship have a lot in common. Like you got to plan your season. You got to have goals. You got to plan and struggle and kind of like figure out the eccentricities of what your outcomes are work on your ambiguities, like plan, organize. Like there's lots of things entrepreneurs and athletes have in common. Not to say that it goes both ways all the time.
Right.
But nevertheless, when I went to UA, I was like, I want to go the entrepreneurial route in marketing. And generally, like being an athlete, I had to go to interviews and learn how to speak in front of people all the time. So naturally, the marketing and sales route is what I did do. And I liked it. And then they were like, hey, Horton, we will let you not take the GMATs if you continue to do your MBA. I was like, is a GMAT a test? I don't even know what it was.
I didn't know what it
I
was.
figured out what it was, but I was like, yeah, sure, I'll continue. So I just like went on from like my baccalaureate straight into my MBA. And then there was a guy, did you take a class with Al Boulay?
I did not. I don't think that.
He was awesome. But he was a retired CEO of BP Alaska
Oh, cool.
who came back to teach MBA and leadership.
Okay, yeah.
And it was like the awesomest class ever. And he kind of correlated and put a lot of things together at once that I loved. It was pretty cool. So that's how I kind of went towards the entrepreneurial finance route, because like, how do you start a company and how do you succeed at it, really? Because they talk about finances like bonds, stocks and all that. I'm like, that doesn't work in Alaska. No one does that. I mean, they do like McKinley Capital, but I didn't want to sit in a cubicle all day. Nevertheless, I just kept doing that and went through my MBA. And then got all done thinking I'm going to go take over the world and be an executive. No.
Yeah, that was kind of where I went to UA for finance, got my bachelor's, and then it was kind of, do I do my master's or do I not? And I kind of got 50-50 from people like, do you want to build your network? Because that's what your master's is essentially going to do for you. You're not going to learn some secret skill, or I should say, they're not giving away like these secret classes that make you successful in your master's. And so I opted out of it. And, I was like, I feel a calling towards music. And that's what I did as soon as I graduated was music. Yeah, all that kind of stuff. But like, I kind of regret it because I feel like a master's would have been a cool, thing to have on my resume. Kind of like my gold thing
like
that I would have.
your gold pass, you can pull it out. I mean, the hard part for me as a parent and just being later in my 40s is like, I don't know the true value of education. And I think our generation will take it for granted because we haven't seen the true value of our education, because it's not this thing that you were talking about with our parents' generation, where like having a master's degree was a big deal. Like we're going to be executives at Boeing.
Yeah.
With that degree.
I'm going to work 60 years and retire.
We're going to full pension. We're going to be executives. It's like it's Archer or something. We're going to have this, like, we're going to have cigarettes and we're going to sit back and we're going to, like, no. Like, it's been almost disappointing to know that, like, I spent all the time and money on this, but it doesn't correlate to, like, what they sold it as, like, this executive route. And, like, everything's going to be, we're going to make, $300,000 a year. No. Like, I work for the fire department. But the caveat is like, you can't go back and look at your life and be like, well, that was a waste of time. No, it was a purpose in that, right?
Right. You can always find value in everything you've done, whether it's a failure, like just like we were talking about earlier, like you can look at stuff as failures, but you can also spin it to lessons learned and mistakes you made that you won't make again and all these different things.
I mean, and the true caveat is like, maybe the fact that I have a master's degree and I graduated top of my class, going back to a fourth grader who couldn't read or write.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. You'll take that.
I'll take that.
You're like, fuck you, haters.
Yeah, right. And the funny thing about that exact thing is there's never been someone there's no like chorus in like a Greek chorus, where it's like, Andre has learned. Like there's no one that's been evaluating me. It's just a matter of my own, like, take that, younger Andre. Like you're able. Yeah. But you can also understand people could have a vice or a chip on your shoulder. And that's the third thing tonight, where I was like talking to a counselor, and he told me at some point, I started weeping. It was this really cool, cathartic like moment where I'd always walk into any room when I was in fourth grade, all the way through my educational process, thinking I was the stupidest person in the room. Like I was the least educated, the least intelligent anywhere.
Right.
Because I was the fourth grader who couldn't read and write. And that like stuck with me my entire life until this counselor was like, do you still think you're stupid? And of course, I'm like, I think I was 38 when I went to see this guy. And I'm like, no. He's like, I don't believe you. I'm like, don't try to trick me. And then I started crying and like doing this like shaking thing. Like, I'm still the fourth grader who thinks there's... And then I realized
you're
like,
stupid.
Yeah. There's that fourth grader in me still today who will walk into a room, this room included, be like, oh, I'm by far the stupidest guy here. Oh my God. Right? And it's this little chip that I didn't recognize. Yeah. at all.
Yeah.
And so now I'm just like blown away by learning this, where I'm like, I walk into every room thinking I'm stupid.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, it's funny that you say that because like my wife, she's a life coach, right? And so
You're married to a life coach?
I am.
Okay, sorry. Keep going.
You know, he gets it.
Okay.
He gets it. No, but like, so, I mean, I'm the same way, right? I mean, I think as a man, you like have these masculine things that are passed down to generation. You're like, all right, don't talk about feelings. You know, I'm a tough guy. But then like when she was like, she gave me that little like nugget of like, like you are still a child.
Mind job. That's what I call it.
Yeah, it really blew my mind. And
Yeah.
she's like, talk to yourself like you're a child, like you are little Steven.
Yeah.
Like you're, same. I was like, it blew my fucking mind that I was like, oh my God, I've been telling little Steven that he's a fucking idiot.
Right.
Like, and he's a failure and he can't do this and he can't do that right. And that means he's got to push even harder to get to the goal. Right. Oh, dude. Yeah. So mind blowing of like just switching that and being like, talk to yourself like you are a little person and like you're okay. Oh yeah, it's game changer.
And the thing I've had to recognize, even if I do walk into a room and there's a fourth grader saying, "Hey Horton, you are the stupidest person in this room right now." The thing is, I've recognized like I'm okay with that. Like I don't have to prove that I'm the smartest, so it's almost like a relief.
Yeah,
you know,
I get that. Like you want to almost. The kind of cliches, you never want to be the smartest one in the room because that means you're never going to learn anything. Right. I don't talk to little Kyle. He's a dickhead. So I haven't talked to him in a while.
You got a ways, baby.
I try not to reach out to him. He's toxic.
He's a little asshole.
Yeah, one of those guys.
Yeah. No, I get that though, because I think as men, when you grow up, it's just like hard to kind of look at as a kid, because I think Steve and I both have a lot of, I hate using the word trauma.
Oh yeah.
Because it is.
We have to find a different word for it.
Yeah.
Right? Christian trauma, or just, I mean, religious.
We could do a podcast just on that.
Oh, we have.
Oh, okay. Because I always joke with people. I was like, you know, I'm a professional Christian. You throw me a verse, I'm like, know that. Okay.
Yeah.
No, heard that. I got.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean,
and like trauma, toxicity.
Oh yeah,
whatever. Yeah,
what is it? Deconstructing
the church. Yeah,
deconstructing.
That's
all
the
that
catchphrase.
stuff. All those words. No, I mean, you finish your thoughts. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just saying that. Like,
you.
I've mentioned this on the podcast before. Is I spent so much of my time as a youth, deathly afraid of hell, crying myself to sleep all the time because I sinned all the time.
Yeah.
And you know, I'd forget to ask for forgiveness some nights, and I'm like, God, if I die tonight,
it's
straight to hell.
We need to go have a beer after this and talk through this.
I'm okay.
Instead of straight to jail, like on Parks and Rec, it was straight to hell. Like it was like you curse straight to hell. Like, and I feel like that's still a conversation I need to have with little Kyle. Because it's like I feel like my youth was just spent with fear. And crying.
Yeah. Right.
And so now I feel like I am always in a good mood for the most part. Like I'm a happy guy, use humor all the time instead of like, I just have no sadness emotions anymore. I feel like I've blocked them out.
See, it's interesting that you say that like you were afraid of death and or hell, because I was afraid of death. Right? Yeah. Like that's when I was like 4 years old. I accepted Jesus in my heart. And it was I remember the picture Bible. My mom turned the page and it was Jesus on the cross. And I was like, I don't want to die like that. Dude, no, serious. I was scared.
Don't do that to me, Mom.
In Sunday school, like, they didn't put the nails through they put it through his wrist. It would slide out.
Right between the old
so much worse.
Yeah, right?
So much worse. Yeah. And it's funny because like I thought for sure I was like, I was like,
you're gonna die.
I was scared of death. I was scared of death ever since then. And then I don't talk about it. And then, I mean, this is getting real deep, but like we had a buddy die, like one of my best buds died last year. And like, I was like, I don't want anything to do with this. And then I started like working through it and like, why am I like escaping, like pushing everything away right now? And it's because I'm going back to that little child. And I was
crazy.
Like, I was scared of death and I'm afraid of it. And so I'm pushing it away from me.
Right.
And so I would like just be like, well, I'm going to hold up in my house and I'm going to work on my business. Like, that's what I'm going to do.
Going outside, you could die.
I mean,
Right.
it was just like, but it's so interesting how like even that stuff, which I wasn't even faced with for years and years and years, and then all of a sudden it comes back up. You're like, oh shit,
Little seeds that grow, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, the irony of this too, like we have a lot in common in that regard of like fear.
Yeah.
And like my parents' generation, it felt like they taught us that like spirituality and being a Christian, it almost felt like it was an equation.
Yeah.
Right. And like life's a Lego. Everything clicks together.
Yeah.
And this, I had the same thing. I was like, I think I had unpierced thoughts. I gotta. Oh man.
Yeah.
Did I remember? And then
I definitely looked at that woman.
Yeah.
With
I mean,
lustful eyes.
I definitely looked at the LL Bean magazine. Quite a few times,
your level
Mom.
of what you think's awesome. It's just like that downhill suit is awesome.
Yeah.
Spandex, and it was that fear thing, and like that goes back to like in your 40s. You're like, wait a minute, and this like that was just like. At micro, like peripetia, it's the coolest word ever. I like where this aha moment. It's in Greek plays. They call it peripetia.
It sounds like a disease.
Peripetia.
Yeah, no, peripetia.
Peripetia.
And it's in every single Greek play. There's this peripatetic moment where like either the protagonist it'd be like Luke Skywalker, like you're my dad,
right?
Like that's the peripatetic
realization.
moment of Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
Like everyone's connected. But that's where I realized like that fear has literally been holding us down the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes against everything. It goes against everything about spirituality and faith is fear. And like for centuries, Catholicism maybe has used that. Like, did you go to penance?
Right.
Like, and then sometimes my parents or my dad will ask me about, like, did you tithe this month?
Right.
Ooh. Like, I'm like, oh,
10%.
He's like, what did you say? I said, oh, shucks.
Shoot.
Right? Or what?
Shoot.
Yeah.
Shiitake mushrooms.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's been like riveting in this like other season of my life to recognize that's been holding us down the whole time. And then looking back at my life, this whole rear view mirror windshield thing I was telling you guys about, like, and it's weird. I mean, I tell people like, I have been pursued by my creator from the very beginning. Like he pursued me when I was at what I thought was the stupid fourth grader, and he's never let me go. But it's like, it's our generation's job to like understand we have to define our spirituality and our faith different than our parents.
Sure.
Because it's easy for us to be like, well, the God I trust is the same as my father's.
Right.
Is it?
Yeah.
Like and people are like, what do you mean your God's different? You can't have this. You can't have a different God. And I'm like, oh, actually I can, because my relationship with my creator is my own. And like the Funatel I was telling you guys about, the gondola.
Yeah.
Like I'd call it being just overwhelmed some mornings. Like I'm like, why am I weeping looking at the Atlas Mountains in Africa? And I recognized that like I was being pursued. Like that's my creator saying, yeah, yo, Horton, what's up? And I think he talks like that. Everyone always thinks it's some kind of
what up, dude?
Big booming voice. He's like, Horton, dude, you're gonna have a best day ever on this glacier.
It's gonna be tight.
At 12,000 feet. And then there's like, yeah, you're gonna see some hot ladies. You're gonna go.
I made them.
Yeah, I made those. And then we're gonna have dinner down at the Sonnenhof. You're gonna have some good beer. It's gonna be good.
I made the guy that made that.
Right? And then you get this whole like,
and the ingredients.
You are literally elated the whole day.
Yeah.
It's gonna be dope.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome. And he's like, what's dope? Doesn't matter. I made that too. You know, like, right? And it's just like, where did all this fear and just like oppression come from? And it took me like down my like late 30s to like, oh, dude, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like Steve and I, and I'm just speaking for myself, but I think Steven feels similarly, is like as we've gotten older, I use this loosely, but we become more spiritual in some regards in terms of like looking at the big picture, at all the religions. Like, why do people believe,
Bro.
I wouldn't say we don't, I'm again, speaking for myself. It's not that I don't want to believe there's a God or I want to be an atheist or anything like that. It's just, I think about things so much differently than I do the Acts 2:38, like go forth, be baptized, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I don't want to think of a God like that per se. Like there's a lot of
magnifying
need to-
glass and the anthill thing. Like that's like the whole death thing. It's like, ooh, I messed up. I'm gonna get it.
I'm gonna get smite.
I'm gonna get it.
I'm gonna get that shit.
And like it's just not like that. And it just took me. I think if I have one regret, it's taking me so long to figure that out. I mean, I wish I knew that. I mean,
Sure. Yeah,
right?
I mean,
No,
you always
would-
want
right.
to
like,
know
oh,
stuff
man.
sooner, but
Yeah.
it's maybe you found it out at the right time, though. Too.
Yeah.
And that's I think that's the thing too, because I feel like, I mean, for me, I grew up in the church. You know, my parents were missionaries, so I was like in my life.
Oh, yeah.
But then I go back to my journals then, right? Because I've journaled off and on for years. And I go back to my journals, and it's all questions. Like, what am I doing? Why do I really believe what I really
Why
believe?
am I here?
And I'm leading worship. I'm speaking. I am, on stage preaching the word.
Yeah. Who did Abel marry? Wait, sorry. That's right.
Well, yeah. How did they have kids?
Yeah. Okay, go back.
Yeah, nobody knows.
I digress.
Nobody knows.
Okay, keep going.
I thought you were testing me. I was like,
No. I don't. I asked that in Sunday school. No, get this kid out of here.
Was it Eve? Was it his mom?
I'm trying to figure this out. Maybe a sister. Okay, keep going. Sorry.
No. So I there's so many questions riddled in these journals from years ago, and I was a counselor in summer camp, right? All this stuff, and then now, like I look back at that as sad little Stephen growing up, and I'm like, man, I am so much more. I look at my journals now, and it's night and day. I'm way more spiritual now because I think it was like it took me, and it was a really tough time to break through some of that guilt, that fear, and I'm still working through it for sure. There's no like, it's gone for good.
Right.
Like, I think there's still some stuff there, but I think it took some time, some working, some journaling, some reading, some figuring shit out. And it's like, I am way more spiritual than when I was on stage or leading worship or all this stuff.
Isn't that a mind job?
Mind blowing.
Mind blown.
Yeah.
And then the hardest thing that in this season too is like, how do I interact with my peers like I think my parents thought we should have, or like, when do we talk about this? Like, and how?
Right out of the gate.
Yeah, I know, right? But then that's like what it was like. We're going to leave this. We're not going to give you a tip. We're going to leave a track here for you, server.
Yeah.
Like that.
But
like,
it's disguised as a $5 bill.
right.
Yeah.
But we didn't actually leave any dollar bills.
Right.
It was just
And,
this
like,
fake
you'd see
track
that
they open
stuff
up.
and like,
Oh, I love those.
That always
are you,
pissed
like,
me off.
And I'm like, I mean, I hate to admit it, but I'm pretty social and extroverted. But I think I struggle sometimes with like the spirituality connection with people because it's not the first thing I talk about. It's like,
You got to lead off with the Kane question.
yeah, I know, right?
Right
Like,
out the gate.
I think it was a sister.
So,
It had to
question
be.
for you all.
Yeah.
And then after the arc, I
Yeah.
mean, what did we do here?
Yeah.
Because I don't think everyone looked like
How did
Jennifer
we
Connelly.
how did we
from-
replenish,
You know what I mean?
replenish theory?
Like, yeah.
And Moses, didn't he do some weird stuff too?
It's like, there's like, just get out of the Old Testament. There was
Yeah.
like,
That is funny. Yeah,
That's not where you want to
Me
point
and my wife,
people.
we were just talking about Abraham, and I was like,
Abraham, yeah.
What was it like?
It's like, you try to kill me.
Yeah, it's just
sacrificing your
but
son.
also like
Right.
hanging out with his wife's servant and all
Right.
that stuff. And it was just like, what's going on here?
What
And like,
Real Housewives show is this?
yeah.
No.
It's probably all pretty normal stuff then. So,
Right.
whatever.
But I have not, I eventually hope to figure out the segue, or like it's not an easy conversation, especially in 2023.
Yeah.
Because it's like people are super divisive and like, oh, you're one of those. And I don't think I've ever told someone, they're like, what's your background? I don't think I've ever told someone based on my background, like, oh, are you a Christian? And I was like, I usually tell people I'm a follower or like I'm a believer, because I think there's so much toxicity associated with Christianity to immediately assume politics.
Yeah.
Like you get into that. Oh, that must mean you're running in our.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I don't.
did you vote for Trump?
Yeah, right.
I'm like,
We're just,
oh.
let's take a look at your back of your car.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So you ever smoked weed and like you drink, and it's just like this big long rabbit
What do you think
hole.
about red hats?
Right. Red
Yeah.
hats.
Yeah.
Like, and
You
so
talk about Limp Bizkit?
Oh, yeah.
Because I
I'm
like
not talking
it.
about Fred Durst.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
Okay. Bummer.
don't talk. Yeah, Fenders. I went to a Korn concert. It was awesome.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Kyle opened up for Korn.
yeah, when they were at the Denina Center.
Yeah. I missed that
I
show.
was taking photos for that.
I think that's why we messaged maybe.
Yeah,
Because I think I
was-
asked you maybe if you had pictures from that and you weren't there.
I took pictures of Callahan.
Yeah, he was like, yes, they played right after us.
Okay.
And
So
that's
Did
why
you-
I was pissed.
Did you ever pay?
That's why I was
Did you ever take pictures for Zombie Fists?
Yeah, all the time.
We played 4 Zombie Fists.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Different Kyle.
It's very ghoulish. That's
different
why I
band.
liked it.
Yeah.
Very dark. Very dark.
I wonder if you took pictures of us.
Sure we did. Now I'm going to have to go back to 2010.
Do you
pull
still
back
have
the
those
server.
pictures?
Oh, yeah, I don't erase anything.
Neither do I.
That sounds very creepy.
Yeah,
Like,
that's-
I don't erase anything. But I don't erase photos. Like, I have stuff from like 2004.
Oh, damn.
I got pictures
I wonder
from
if you have any
below.
Thera pictures.
Yeah, probably.
Oh, wow.
I was in the pit
Yeah.
taking photos.
Interesting. Probably.
Yeah.
I do remember, man, I wonder, it was either you or sadly the man that passed away not too long ago. Because there was like 2 photographers, I remember, but I talked to one of them and he gave me his card and it was like, I took pictures of you on my
there was one guy that always took all the.
Yeah, he was that. It was good.
What was his name?
I was only in there because like
Eric's?
Mikey, the drummer for Callahan,
Yeah.
like my best friend.
Oh,
And then-
nice.
No shit.
Yeah, Mikey, dude.
Hewitt guy?
Yeah, Hewitt.
Yeah.
So that's the advertising agency I'm talking about.
That's yours.
Yep.
I just did work for you. You're like,
Yeah.
well, not you, but like I
Yeah.
did work for
Rub
you.
it in, freaking Steven. Jeez.
Yeah, but it was back. I mean, it's back.
Well,
in the
not
day,
you,
it was
because
like-
you're not a
now
part
it's
of
like
it. I don't know if you
Toms and,
knew
like,
that.
Yeah.
They're all like awesome people.
Cool
It's
now,
just-
yeah.
that was
Yeah.
just like back
Mackenzie
in the day. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
no way.
Just- they're
Okay.
super bright, awesome
Yeah.
people, right? Yeah.
So, how'd you find a camera in your hands? Like,
I am curious.
where does
Oh,
that leap?
My mother was my mother's crazy. I mean,
That's a good start.
yeah,
like,
let's
that's
start with that. I always tell people my mother is so white, she's blue because she's
Okay.
from northern Idaho, and my dad is from Griffin, Georgia,
Okay.
and he's really dark.
Dirty South.
So yeah, very. So if you see them on each side of me, like none of us will show up on a camera. The camera's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Who do I focus on? Usually I turn out fine. My mom turns out like my mom turns out like powder, and then my dad, this Aboriginal. I forget where I was going with that. Okay, so my mom did photography.
Oh, okay.
And she was a concert pianist.
35 mil.
Right, 35 mil film. She handed that to me when I was 13. I
Remember
think.
what kind it was?
It was a Canon AE1,
Oh, old school.
and then I saved up my allowance and got an AE1 program so I could put a winder on it from Stewart's Photo.
Oh, cool.
Shopping
I
local.
hustled
Way to
hustled
go.
them for
Shout
like
out
an
to
A.
Stewart.
It's like I get an AE1 program piece in the glass right there. Watch that one. Like, so I got.
Have you ever seen Leo the Learner?
Yeah,
I brought it.
He's like, I'm here. And then I was like, so then I went to Stellar. We had a dark room.
Oh,
So I-
cool.
like-
so you were able to do your own
Yeah,
photos.
yeah. And then I went to King Career Center 2 to do more photography.
Nice.
Loved it.
Oh, cool.
35 millimeter too. It was crazy as a kid. Did slides.
Man.
E6 slides.
You were-
E41 process.
You were the
Old
kid.
school.
Yeah. And then yeah, that was that kid. I had like a donkey bag, I'd push film and pull it, like you could do all this crazy stuff with film. And then worked at the Anchorage Daily News for Perfect World.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Shit. Okay.
As a kid. Did the yearbook for Stellar. And then never stopped carrying cameras. And you can imagine if you're traveling to like Miyako, Japan.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
like, it was a little harder to carry 35 millimeter back then, but
Right. That's what I was wondering about your gondola pics, if they
Yeah.
were like existed outside of social media.
no, they were like, that's pre-social media.
No, I
Isn't
know,
that
but
crazy?
like, did you ever take pictures while you were like, without posting them, essentially?
Oh yeah, hundreds, if
Yeah.
not thousands. Just like the whole scanning
So
thing.
there's a coffee table book somewhere in here.
yeah, there's an archive coming,
I like it.
Oh, I like it.
but I don't want to coffee dance.
Okay. So you found yourself with the camera in your hand, and you're kind of finding your way outside of master's degree. Where does that lead to your entrepreneurial endeavors?
Well, every time I'd come back from skiing, I had this like short window where I could have to make money. So I did like window washing one year. I did lawn mowing. I did this thing called asphalt seal coating.
Mhm.
It's the dirtiest job ever. You resurface parking lots.
Yeah.
So I did that. And then once I got out of college, I did that full time. So I was a general contractor and I pursued bigger contracts with bigger firms. And they're like, okay, you can do all the Lowe's in the state and resurface all of them and then stripe them and do handicap. I'd paint the lines and did all. So I do that every summer,
Oh, wow.
all summer. You would never have a day off
Yeah.
because that's like
Summer's so
that-
short that
Right.
you
Summer's
gotta-
short.
yeah.
And like I remember working, I think my record was I worked 27 hours straight
Oh.
trying to finish this project because we do these Lowe's jobs. It would take us like 4 days and it was like 80 grand.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was fun.
Okay.
And I hire all
Good
my
money.
buddies. We'd sleep in our trucks and then wake up and keep working.
Wow.
I did that and it was a dirty job. Then I finished my grad program and then I worked for a company called Sockeye Consulting.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know Sockeye Consulting.
Right. They were like the smartest, like
Yeah.
in wicked. They all worked at Microsoft and then started their own company and then came up to Alaska. So I started working for them and I was programming.
Oh, no shit.
And I was programming this application called Great Plains, which is their accounting software.
Yep.
What were you using? Coding language.
C++.
Oh, okay. All right.
C++ is
Let's
equal.
go. Let's go.
So they taught me all that and it was cool. And then they realized like Horton's in the wrong place. Like, because everyone in the cubicle's typing and coding.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, what's your favorite color? I'd start talking about, stuff. And the clients would come in. I'd start gabbing with them.
Right.
Yeah.
And the CEO's like,
We need somebody to talk to people.
yeah.
Yeah.
So he's like, we're going to make you the director of business development. You go sell.
Oh, cool.
So I went to oil companies and Alaska Native firms all over the state selling the products that Sockeye. And that was my first like, man, I'm kind of good at this.
Oh.
Because they'd say,
Okay,
we're
that's
going to
where it
buy
comes
it. We're going to buy it. I'm like, okay, I don't know what that means, but okay, let's have beer later. Like I didn't see the sale as much as the relationship.
Right.
And that's what business
Mad
development
Men
is like relationship development. That's really what it is. Nevertheless, I did that for a couple of years. And then a friend of mine called Arlen Iojak, he was this really gifted Alaska Native programmer who worked for CTG, which is an oil field, software company. He's like, Andre, we should sell software to oil companies. I'm like, that's a good idea. Let's do that. And he at the time had written a software called Dynamo and several other software packages that aggregated wellhead data. So like all the information coming out of a wellhead we're pumping oil out of. There's all these different, like Halliburton, all these different companies had data. He figured out how to aggregate all their data into one interface. He was really smart, but he's like, look, we got to sell this. So I convinced him that we should pursue British Petroleum for a contract.
Okay.
He's
Go
like,
for
what?
the big boys.
That's big, Horton. I'm like, we can do it.
Yeah.
And I
like
put together a contract. We didn't even have an LLC, a partnership agreement, nothing. I wrote a contract that he sent to BP, and BP's like, sure, do it. So then he called me back in shaking, like he's about to have a seizure.
Yeah.
He's like, dude, Horton, we got it. I'm like, what are they going to do? He's like, they said they're going to write a check tomorrow. I'm like, they are? For how much? He's like, $850. I'm like, $850 or $850,000. He's like, $850,000. I'm like, we need to create an LLC. We don't even have an EIN number. Like, how are they even going to write the check? They don't even know who to write it to.
Oh my God.
Can you write 2 checks?
Right, 2
Split
checks.
it between me and Art.
We're going to go Mexico. Yeah. And what's crazy looking back is we could have just been like, all right, we're done. But
Yeah, one and done.
I told him, I was like, we should hire people.
Yeah.
And we hired Maria Jose, and she worked at MSI, and she was a graphic designer. So like, why would a software company hire a graphic designer? Marketing, but then also the user interface. So we're like, here's our user interface, make it look pretty. So she created a user interface that was like pleasant to look at. And then we programmed the back of it. So we created this software package for BP that was like super like pretty, but when you actually clicked on things, it did stuff.
Oh, hell yeah.
So a user interface and the UI is what we started
Before
building.
like UI, UX was a
Right.
thing.
We did, and that was in Alaska. So BP blew up and then they sold it to all their subsidiaries across the globe. So we blew up and like one client, we went from, it was terrifying. Because BP calls and there's like, we're on like a concrete table, like the cinder blocks with plywood.
Yeah.
We're on a conference call and we're trying to make it look like, well, here at Hewitt, we have staff working on that right now. And there's like
the
3 of us.
backdrop falls down.
The backdrop falls. This is like classic entrepreneurial stuff, right? And then Maria Jose we hired her for the year. She wrote the interface in 3 weeks because she's really gifted at creative stuff.
Damn.
So we're like, what are you going to do the rest of the year?
Yeah.
She's like, and she's from
Vacation.
she's from Ecuador. So she has like the coolest accent. She's like, I'm going to go find more clients.
Oh, yeah.
And then so she pulled all her clients in, and she was just doing graphic design.
Oh, nice.
And then we kept building user interfaces for all the global, because we started picking up all these enterprises that BP was giving us. So we had Baku, we had a bunch of subsidiaries in Russia. I mean, it's terrifying for me because I don't even speak petroleum anything.
Right.
I'm just the sales guy, literally the OxyClean guy.
Was there a lot of like
You're
looking
just sticking things on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Like,
it
worked!
And I'd have these conference calls with all these engineers, and they'd be asking questions, and I'm like,
1 second. Arlen?
yeah, Arlen.
Yeah.
I'd text Arlen while I'm talking. I'm like, what is and there's all these technical terms.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, it's da-da-da. I'm like, sir, to answer that.
And also, do you guys know how to start an LLC? By the way, on
State
an
of Alaska
unrelated
something.
note.
Like our bank doesn't know. They wouldn't cash our check.
Yeah, I'm not surprised for
Because like,
opening.
the LLC doesn't exist yet. I'm like, well, give me 24 hours.
Yeah, it will.
So I had to go create the LLC.
Kind of does.
to
You
cash
ever
the
got a
check.
BP contract? I don't think so.
And
Okay.
it kept growing.
Yeah.
Like,
Damn.
So we went from one BP client to over 100 clients in 18 months.
Oh.
So we had to hire all these CTG people that were like, well, we're going to work for you. So we had people in Russia, a couple of people in Anchorage. We had 16 employees.
Sakhalin, is that where?
I don't know. We had
Yeah,
people.
that was where like all the, well, in Russia, that's where
Yeah.
big.
And there was this huge workhouse of like, so we had another subsidiary we created in Russia that just did all the programming. And they'd come over and talk, and we'd go back, flying back and forth. And then on Maria Jose's side, she's like, I need help. So then we hired more graphic designers. And essentially we created an advertising agency to run the communications for the global side of BP.
Gotcha.
So essentially, if you think about it, it's like a software company that has a really snazzy, gorgeous front interface. Like our website looked awesome. People thought we were huge.
That's a secret.
I would say, just make your website look
Yeah.
good. I always tell people that.
Yeah.
Start with a good website.
So the interface was good, and people thought we were way bigger than we were. So it was cool.
So that came to an end to some extent,
Yeah,
right?
because eventually our interface, our operating agreement was never really solid because we just were crazy growing fast.
Right.
And eventually we're like, we need to spin off the communications side. And then so there's some disagreements on like how this structure works now because, now we're we're doing $2.5 million in revenue and we never had a partnership agreement on who has equity.
Right.
So then we're like, okay, well, this is awkward.
Fudge.
Right.
Yeah, that's
And by then
weird.
we had like 16 employees and we had people there all the time. And then, I was a CFO by then. So I was like managing everything and I could see the writing on the wall. I was like, this is going to come down crazy because by then I had 5 of my best friends working.
Yeah.
And I was like, ooh, this
This
is
could
going to
be
be like the
interesting.
movies.
Yeah.
We've
Yeah.
been here since the beginning with you, Andre.
Right.
How much do I get?
Right.
Yeah.
And then we're like, okay. And then this is like the part that did happen like the movies is one day I could just, stuff started to fester and I went into work and like everything was gone. It was like the movie with Jim Carrey where like just the trees left, like the printers were gone. Like everyone decided just like
To
just
Damn.
take
spread out.
everything out, huh?
Yeah. And since I was a CFO, I had the fiduciary, obligation to pay bills. That left me zero because the communications team left, the software team left, and then I'm in the middle.
Damn.
Jeez.
So I was like, all right. And no one was answering their phones. It was weird.
That's awkward.
Yeah. But
That's
I mean,
that's a shitty end
yeah,
to something cool.
devastating. So then so we had 5 of my best friends. None of us talked to each other for 9 months, maybe.
That's the worst.
And so Maria Jose and Mikey, like they were my best friends and our kids all hung out together. So then this is like the cool part of the story that I think the context of spirituality would occur is like at some point you have to surrender your ego and your pride and be like, what is most important? I felt like
Revenge.
they hurt my feelings. Like, we're going to burn everything down.
Hell
And
yeah.
we're never going to be friends. But then I'm like, man, life's too short. And we still built something awesome.
Right.
They were able to like carve out the communication side. The software side went with Arlen, right? So it was this big cataclysmic split. It really hurt. And I was like left holding the ficus
Yeah.
and like some toner cartridges. But because I split that LLC off and split it another one. So I kind of helped with the separation. But at the same time, it's super toxic because it's your best friends. It's like there's resentment. Da, da, da. So 7 months in, I called Mikey. I was like, hey, I need to go to counseling with your wife. That's like super crazy,
Yeah.
right? But essentially, like, I was like, man, I'm hurt that you guys would do this. And then I told all of our friends, we kind of had a literal come to Jesus meeting of like, hey, we need to kind of figure out what to do next. And some people couldn't make that meeting.
Yeah.
For
so like
whatever
a group
reason.
counseling meeting,
Yeah.
essentially.
And they couldn't make it for a variety of reasons. And I can't speak for them on why, but I wanted to go because I think relationship really matters in business more than cash
Sure.
and like the revenue. So I walked away, but I went to counseling with them. And like over the course of several sessions, we figured things out. And there's elements to it where you really want someone to like, oh yeah, you want to know how much pain I was in because you did it. You got to let it go and be like, hey, I really appreciate who you are now. Let's just let it go. And I would say that was my peripatetic moment then where it's like letting it go was this huge relief because I had so much ego involved in like what I thought I was worth and what I had built. And you always want people to know, like, you know what, you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for me. And that's just ego.
Right.
And then some people would like, I've always heard ego stands for edging God out. People would say that because I thought I was in control and I built this big company, but I lost everything. Like I literally lost that entire company. And I had to build it back by begging my best friends to like forgive me and like say, hey, can we be friends again? Because our kids are best friends. And my kids were like, Dad, can we go hang out with, Nope. I'm full of pride and ego. You're not going to allow it. We're never going to see them again. Couldn't do it. Yeah. And it wasn't just for my kids, but I recognized like life's too short. Like let's fix this and move on. We all went to Mexico last year together.
To Playa del Carmen.
Yeah. Playa del Carmen. And then
we were talking about before.
Right.
Which is amazing city.
And then I picked their kids up at school. And like, it felt like, is there a pain and sorrow back in that season? Yes. It like super hurt. And we would be huge right now, I think. But we didn't have all our ducks in a row for an operating agreement. Like fixing that, like, so now when people ask me for consultancy, I'm like, you want to do a partnership? Let me tell you a few things.
Yeah. Do you ever maybe throw in a jab or two when you guys are out together? Like, hey,
it would be so.
You're picking up lunch, right? You remember that one time?
That
where
one
you cost
time,
me everything,
all 6 figures.
Yeah. You remember that?
It would be so. It would feel so good.
Right.
But for about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And then you'd have that whole
damage
thing,
that you've done for
and then,
doing that.
And the crazy thing about business is you can try to convince people that aren't necessarily business people about something, but if they don't speak they don't know what GAAP is.
Right.
Or what's EBITDA.
Yeah.
Or they don't understand
You're
the balance
speaking my
sheet.
love language right
yeah,
now.
I know they're like, EBITDA.
Yeah. Generally accepted
it's hard for
accounting
them
principles.
to contemplate or understand, and that's okay.
Right.
And then I was okay to be like, I can move on.
Yeah.
I can move on. And I'm just not going to, like, I could say something, but I'm not because life's just too short.
Yeah. I get that.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I kind of feel like business a lot of times. Now that I've been married for a few years, you're married.
Ooh.
Like, there's a lot that you learn from each of those, business and marriage. And then you kind of apply them to both. Because, like, I look at my relationship with Steven with the podcast and everything. And I kind of have to apply what I've learned in marriage sometimes for us. Like there's certain things to argue about. There's certain things to let go. Pick your battles.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And like, there's
Oh,
a lot
yeah.
of things where it's like, show appreciation for your significant other. Like if Steven does something, it's like, I'm one of those people that I don't like to be told I did something good. Like I don't need any praise ever because I'm just like, I'm on my road.
I hide.
Right.
Right.
But I feel like other people sometimes need to be
Affirmed.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing like with my wife. I never expect her to tell me like, oh, way to go with the kids. But like I always want to make sure she feels appreciated. So it's like, it's weird how there's this like correlation between marriage and business that like you apply a lot of the things you learn to each of those.
I'm your work wife.
Oh God.
Side hustle wife.
Yeah.
And I tell
side
the
wife.
caveat is like the business relationship is 100% performance.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, you don't take the trash out, we got problems.
Yeah.
We're like, I got busy, didn't take the trash out, honey. It's like, okay. And that correlation's what I've always told people too, is like, it's performance oriented. But either way, like the things I've learned from business where I had to walk away from that, like the pride of like running this successful advertising agency to like that I had to swallow some stuff, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Embrace the suck, as they say, or like just move on. But that was just one of I had a couple other businesses that were similar to that. But if you think about it now, that company, like they have their own huge building now. They're just they're
You
super
see it right
creative,
when you coming into
right next to a fire station.
downtown.
Don't rub it in, Steven.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Well, no, but
It's
here's the
so
thing.
big,
Like,
dude. There's
they're
a big
huge.
billboard on the side
And
with
then-
their name on it.
Yeah, and then where do you work now? Okay.
Yeah.
But like going full circle, like I have this like where I've come with this is like every time I see something they publish, it goes out, or even we're at dinner and they're talking about some big project they do, I get this super deep sense of gratification
Right.
that they will never have,
Yeah.
or that they don't understand. That's fine, but it's like Alfred Frankel or Viktor Frankl, sorry, about like no one can take that from me. Like the satisfaction that they're successful and I was a part of it, even a little bit.
That's cool.
Right. And like that, there's nothing that no one can take that away.
That's like burning that ego a little bit. Yeah. That's taking that down a few notches. Because you could, I mean, it's very easy to stay up there and then to be on your high horse. But once you get knocked off and you don't get back on again, I think that's the toughest part. I mean, I've never done what you've done, but I'm just from outside looking in. I'm like, I would imagine that's very hard to get to that point, but very rewarding.
Yeah,
as in like you're saying, like it's
painful.
So gratifying,
so painful. But then like they're just they're published something and they're like, wow, we did this really cool video, won an award, and I'm like, I
give the video I worked on.
Yeah, no, right, probably.
Right?
Then I'll give them hugs and high fives, and then I have a deep satisfaction that like I'm glad you're successful.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah, okay. It's cool.
All right, so you threw a few nods to another business. So briefly talk about your other endeavors, because I'm very curious about this Dipper Donuts one too.
Oh man,
because like what
it's
the
dirty.
fuck? Like you go from software to
communications,
advertising to donuts,
to sugar.
Yeah, and I had
first off, yes,
it was
thank you.
Like really quick, I had to there was points where I taste a donut and spit it out like a sommelier does.
Because you had too much.
Yeah, I was like, oh, this quality is good. Looked over patients, like customers looking at me. I'm like, no, it's really good.
Yeah,
it's called diabetes if I eat all these.
No kidding.
Let me see here, because after let me see. I have to look at my own resume and be like, what gap was there? Because at one point I was working for a lobbyist. That job was fun.
Oh, that's right. Kyle did mention something about that.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, did that come before or after?
It was during.
Okay, so talk about both then.
I was like my own consultant and this really well-known lobbyist that I'll probably keep off the podcast because you know lobbyists are.
Oh yeah.
No, I don't. But
Well,
okay.
Lobbying, we could do a whole podcast on lobbying. I mean, it's not
I feel like there's more podcasts about to happen.
Yeah, it's not like House of Cards.
Part 2, Part 3.
Like, go cut these guys' brake lines because they need to vote with us. Like, it's not like that. It's just lots of posturing and lots of money. Like, because it's like,
there's a lot of money.
Yeah, like we're gonna write a check because we want this done. You're like, what is it?
What is that? Thank you for smoking.
Yeah,
that's like the most I know
Nick
about
Naylor.
lobbying.
Yeah, Nick. Wow, that's good. Nick Naylor.
Is that the character?
No, I just made that up. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a character, but it's like sculpting. You're like sculpting the narrative.
Yeah.
Like you're building this narrative about, or what was the one that someone was talking about? Oh, for instance, there was a bill that came out in Lower 48 or somewhere about it's an anti-trans bill.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so immediately my lobbyist brain goes, so it's not anti-trans. It's someone on the other side would come up with it's pro
this
something,
yeah,
right? And that's the narrative they have.
Right.
So then you're fighting narratives, and then there's money involved.
Yeah,
and
lots of money,
and especially in that area, right? But I digress. So I'm saying I was working for this lobbyist, having a good time because you get to leverage your network because you go talk to this person, have coffee with this person, and find out their position on this, and then I did a lot more community-based lobbying instead of legislative lobbying. So I'd be paid to go build a coalition. And mostly my coalition was around healthcare. So like at the time, they were trying to get rid of a lot of the Affordable Care Act in Alaska. It's costly, it costs too much money. But the people that were pushing for it were also not following data as much as, so it's opposition, either side. And then most of my funding came from DC. Big, huge think tanks were just writing checks for wanting to protect the healthcare in Alaska. So I built this big coalition called Protect Our Care. And I went around the state building a coalition of different agencies and organizations saying we need to protect our healthcare. And you would think, like, that sounds very, very democratic, Andre. Are you a Democrat? I'm like, well, no, it has nothing to do with politics because it's as much as it is.
Just sounds good.
Yeah.
Sounds very POC.
Yeah. Protect Our Care. Yeah. I made a logo, built a website, had coalition meetings and then reported to my team in the Lower 48 and in DC. Anyway, this job was a kick in the pants, and I learned a lot from this lobbyist. He's a well-known lobbyist, been around a long time, and he's very bipartisan. That's what I like the best. Is he takes some people for this project and some people for that project. Republican, Democratic, didn't really matter. So while I was doing that, I was finishing up working for an accounting firm, right? Because I was on the State Board of Accountancy for almost a decade. And I'm not an accountant, but I could have tested to be one through UAA. But I don't want to sit in a cubicle. So on the outcome of leaving the board, I joined an accounting firm to help them with their business development. So we went from like a garage to like a big accounting firm. Well, I helped him. That's what I do usually. So he was working in his garage. He's a very gifted forensic accountant. And I was like, man, you got to grow. So we built a building and like I helped him with that. So I was doing that project, working with the lobbyist and
needing sugar in your life.
Needing sugar. So donuts come in, right? And at that time, I was helping him with some of his clients, and one of them was Golden Donuts.
Okay.
So, I mean,
which for people that aren't in Alaska, was
prolific.
Is a phenomenal donut stop.
Lake Otis Tutor.
Lake Otis and Tutor.
Excellent donuts.
Yeah.
Excellent donuts. And leaving some details out, like I'd sit there and watch and work on their books. And I'm like, good grief, man, this is a lot of donuts they're moving. Like hundreds of thousands of dollars of donuts. I'm like, how are they?
Light bulb.
You know, and then my nerd in me is like, I wonder what their unit costs are. You know, so you're doing their square footage by their income and their inventory costs. You know, I'm doing all this stuff. And just on what I could do from the industry, you know, sitting there watching, because I'm doing paperwork. It's like, good grief, they're crushing it.
Yeah. Could you say roughly, or is that kind of
I
private?
It's like confidential accounting information.
Oh. Say it.
No. We'll say it after.
It was, it was enough for any entrepreneur to be like,
oh,
okay,
that makes sense.
I could do that. I could do that. You know?
Yeah.
And then unfortunately the owner died.
Oh.
Passed away. Right.
Oh, buzzkill.
Yeah. Total bummer.
Okay.
And and then we were still doing accounting. I was working on these other clients, and like it was disheartening to see like how a business who's like that family oriented just starts taking a dive.
Correct.
And then other family members and people are trying to fill in the gaps, and they're still doing okay. And then people started approaching them and us and like, hey, we want to buy them. And some of these offers, I was like, whatever, you know. I was like, there's no way, they're worth way more than that. So then I approached my partner. I was like, hey, maybe we should buy him. He's like, you're crazy. I'm not doing that. I'm like, what do you mean? Why wouldn't you do that? It's donuts. And I was like, I got the unit costs and I did the whole pitch. And he's like, well, it's kind of weird because we're a client. I'm like, I'll leave. I can gladly just walk away from this and do this.
Yeah.
So I went out and got a SBA 7A loan.
Oh. Wow.
And I was like, I'm going to do Golden
You were
Donuts.
serious?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to do it. I'm going to buy it. Went out and found the domains, which this friend of mine, Cody Sanchez, that I follow on Instagram, it's technically considered what you call a boring business.
Right.
Like
Which is
family
good.
oriented. It's just like donuts. You make the donuts at 3, 4 in the morning. Leave all my jobs to go pursue this full time because I wanted to renovate the brand, like build a website, social media, and like fix the things I know I could fix really well, and then keep the baseline operations going because that wasn't broken. Like, it ain't broke, don't fix it. Long story short, like for confidentiality reasons, like the deal fell through.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd probably have to say some of it was a difference in culture because the owners are not from here. They're from the Middle East. So there's some, and so the EBITDA gap principles maybe don't function the same way or assumptions. And without saying too much, let's say if you bought Apple, you'd have to buy all their cash, right? Mm-hmm. You can't just say, I'm going to buy your stock. You got to buy the cash. Mm. So in this case, I bought the assets and the cash because there was cash. It's a cash business. But the confusion was like, oh, but we're going to take our cash.
I'm sure that was,
right?
Yeah.
So if Steve Jobs is like, well, here's your stock, but I'm taking all the cash. I'm like, well, wait a minute. I just paid for your cash because it's an asset. Yeah. That's what you buy in a business.
Oh, okay.
So there was confusion on like, well, we're going to take the cash. I'm like, that's fine. Take the cash, but
take it off of the price.
Take it off of the price. And they're like, well, no. I'm like, okay. And this is after everything's signed. I quit my job, cashed out some mutual funds. Like everything was signed. So I was like, all right.
So wasn't this like breaching contract?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So I had to go get an attorney. And this is like, people are like, I've been sued a lot. And I've had to sue, like, not because I wanted to.
Means you're doing something right, dude.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know if I want to go into business with this guy.
I know, right? You get sued a lot, Horton. And I was like, I've had to sue.
Yeah.
And they call it detrimental reliance. Because I to my detriment, and I relied on these physical signed multiple times notarized documents.
Yeah.
The SBA wrote a check and then I was like, all right.
You
So
have
I
to
come
do it.
home with my wife. She's like, what's going on? I'm like,
We're not quite in the donut biz.
right. And I'm unemployed.
Yeah.
And like the lien on our house is still there, you know, like for this big SBA loan. I can't get my kidney back.
Yeah.
They can't put it back in.
Right.
The SBA process was cool, by the way. I can always do that again. But so I just had to like walk away.
Jeez.
So then you're like, okay, lawsuits. I mean, I don't know where the legality is on a podcast talking about lawsuits, but essentially like.
We don't either.
Okay,
That's
good.
the fun
So
part.
essentially, if you're in a detrimental reliance, you could have forced them to sell.
Oh, okay.
Because, hey, you sign this document, like you're out. Like if someone, you give them earnest money and you're about to move and then they say, I don't want to sell my house anymore. Like, well,
Right.
my kid's in my U-Haul right here.
Yeah.
You know, like, what am I going to do? So I had the quandary, like I can force them to sell, but then it would wreck the business because now they're forced to leave something they, in my opinion, believed honestly that they didn't want to sell because they didn't understand the full metric of the deal. Right. And I was like, all right, how about we just figure out closing costs and I walk away
Yeah.
instead of the full sale price, which was
Way more.
yeah. For what I knew the cash operations were worth. And like at that point, she was a widow. I'm like, all right, Horton, what are we going to do?
Damn.
I'm going to start a competitor, Crusher.
I know. Well, I had like so I knew, I mean, by then I knew so much about donuts because I'm one of those all in guys.
Right.
So I just walked away. I had like some closing costs and I was still doing my other businesses kind of. So I just kind of ramped them up a little bit to cover my parenting costs. Like
Right.
adulting costs. And my wife's like, what are we going to do? And she's never been like that ever. She's always like, you're figure it out, Horton.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to my room and work or, she's just,
Yeah.
social worker. She's very resilient. I know who.
Yeah.
Life coach, social worker.
Yeah.
So
She's
nevertheless,
probably got stories.
so I went back and it's like ramped up more lobbying stuff. And then, I was like, you know what? I'm going to start my own donut place. And it was like there wasn't any compete clause. I mean,
Right.
Golden Donuts is an amazing brand. They make good stuff.
Yeah.
Like cool family. And that's like no hard feelings. I just
didn't work out.
didn't work
nice.
out. They
That's
didn't
nice
they
of
didn't
you.
get it.
Like again,
Right.
it's very easy. You could look
Like,
down on ego.
Yeah. And I was like, you know what? And I could have forced them. It's like, why is there so much arsenic in the donuts? Like,
Right.
not that they would do that, but it's just like, why risk that?
Yeah.
And the brand damage you could do. Right.
Yeah.
So then I went and like the rebrand I had done for Golden, I was like, well, I already paid so much money to rebrand and build a website because I was already getting that teed up. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, maybe I can spell a different word. So I went all kinds of different names. I couldn't come up with a name for another donut place. And I had a buddy. I was like, I can't think of a name. And he pulled his pants down and he had a big, huge dipper, like the Big Dipper on his butt. He's like, why don't you call it Dipper Donuts? And Wes, you know who you are. You know who you are.
I was going to say, we need that guy on
yeah,
next.
he is a fun, dangerous.
I wonder. We probably don't know him. We might know him.
Probably. It's a
Maybe.
small town. He was in
Yeah,
here a couple
probably.
times and like he's been an executive at different companies. Like he's around our age. Hilarious. He's
Wonderful. There might be some.
We'll talk
Anyway,
after.
that's an interesting story.
So I was like, that's where Dipper Donuts came from.
Love it.
So I took a little of the proceeds from
You didn't put that in your marketing. I'm surprised.
I know.
Yeah.
I have a picture of him, just the butt. And
I was
that's
going
'cause
to
brought it
say,
to
you should
my-
have made a butt donut.
That
Yeah,
should have
like
been the
with the-
logo.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
A
I
butt
brought it back
donut.
to him and then I showed it and he's like, hey, it's Dipper Donuts. And at the time I had still doing photography and I photographed a wedding for this woman who was a pastry chef. She was like, went to France to be a pastry chef. And I was like, we should start a donut place and you make all the donuts you want and I'm just going to set it all up.
Done.
So at night, after my lobbying job, I'd go into this lease on Spinard and be in there from like 8 o'clock at night until 4 in the morning.
I remember watching that.
Yeah, putting in, like I had to build a commercial kitchen.
Oh wow.
And I didn't go to commercial kitchen building school, right?
Oh wow.
Like this is straight up YouTube.
Steven did.
Yeah, Steve.
I did.
Like I had to, the municipality said I had to put in another set of bathrooms.
Oh, right. Because you
Right.
have to have a customer one and the
Well, I just had to have two given the size of the building.
Oh.
So I at 2 a.m, I had a concrete saw and I was cutting into the pipe, like cutting into this trough to move the septic line. and I'm cutting, and I'm all there by myself, listening to tunes, had headphones on. This machine's loud, and I'm like cutting it, and all the water starts turning black and stinking. I'm like, dude, what is this?
What did I cut
I
into?
cut through the main sewer line for the building.
Jeez.
Oh,
Because I was in the middle. So I'm spraying sewer water all over the place inside of my...
This icing's going to taste weird.
Yeah. So I cut this. Then I realized, like, oh my goodness, I cut into the sewer line. So I have to quickly cut a bigger hole. And this is like 1 a.m, 2 a.m.
Oh, no.
Dig out, drain all the sewer water out, and then put a Y in and like fix the main lines before all the other restaurants and businesses open and start flushing toilets.
Oh,
Do that. This is entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Put the toilets in, get them uni to sign off. We build a brand. Like, it was cool to see the amount of people that cared about the brand and myself. Like,
Right.
not from this ego perspective, like, but a lot of it was influenced by Dale Tran, the former CFO. He's like, Andre, you got to do donuts, you know. And we hung out a lot. He liked photography too, and he was just always a giver. Dale Tran was, and just always giving vision to things and giving you any kind of resources you need.
Mm-hmm.
And same with like the entire Claudie crew. They're always like, and so at one point they're like, okay, we're gonna get all your donuts in our stores.
no way.
Yeah. And,
Damn, that's huge.
right. Tim Gravel just like cool, like he's an entrepreneur, so everyone thinks just because Claudie's been around, he's like constantly reintroducing and like reinventing himself and the brand. Like they've survived a lot. If you think about it,
We want to have Tim and Brad on.
Oh yeah, they'd
Both
be good.
of them. Yeah.
And Michelle,
And Michelle.
total.
Actually, the whole crew.
dude. They'd be a kick in the
We're
pants.
doing a round
Yeah.
table.
Yeah.
That actually, that's ideas we have too.
Yeah,
of
but
doing
talk
round
about
tables.
Starbucks and like, you know, and like there was this thing in business school where people would always ask, you know, American Express, like, well, what do you think about Visa and MasterCard? And they would always respond with like, we don't care about Visa and MasterCard. We care about cash, which is like this mind job. And I think the Claudie brand's the same way. Like, what about Starbucks?
Yeah.
We don't care about Starbucks. We care about Kirkland or something different than what you'd possibly imagine. They've created an amazing brand. So like part of that relationship with Tim and Claudia was like, oh, we're going to help you out, get you in the stores. And long story short, leaving parts out, like I acquired a business partner. And this goes back to like, I made a mistake twice. Didn't have an operating agreement that was as solid as it needed to be. Same what happened with the prior company. Got sued to leave, essentially. So then I was like, okay, I started this. This is my business.
Yeah,
I started
it's my
it.
baby.
You know, like this is the whole pride and ego thing
You
again.
better not.
That's funny that
swear
you
to
say that.
God,
is
Right.
Jason,
swear.
Right.
Jason
Like-
Klein's a lawyer now, right?
Oh my
I don't know if you know
goodness.
that.
No.
He
You should
set up
call
our LLC for this,
Right.
and he said, "Do you guys have an operating agreement?" I said, "No, because I'm going to screw over Steve."
Right. We're going to wait till it's just about successful, then we're
yeah.
out.
Right.
Don't tell him
crap
that,
out of
but-
Steven.
Right. And like, this
Smart.
was my
It's
idea the
honestly
whole
a smart
time.
thing.
Right. And so I kind of had one. Like we've always kind of had one. But you
Yeah.
got to, you don't have to make
It was
this like-
verbal?
yeah. It was a napkin.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
And it doesn't have to be this super like 50-page document. It's just like, hey, if I want to leave, how do I leave?
Right.
And when can I leave? And then what do I get?
Right.
And what do I have to pay you? And then that's one thing. And the second thing is like, maybe you guys are, I don't want to be hindsight, but like, why be 50-50? Because it's like a marriage. It's like, the issue with the donut thing is like, we couldn't decide if it was blue or cobalt, crimson or red.
Right.
Like, because no one's really deciding.
So if the 51% makes the final call.
Yeah. And it doesn't
right.
mean you have to be the asshole and be like, well, I'm the 51%. Because just like a marriage,
Ego, baby.
you know, it's not
Yeah.
like, you know, I don't tell my wife, like, you know what I'm going to do? And then when my wife responds with, you can do whatever you want, that does not mean you should go do it.
Yeah.
Like, we know that. So it's not like,
Let me write that down.
yeah, I know, right?
Yeah,
So it's not like in business where it's like, just because I have the 51% doesn't mean I'm going to use it.
Yeah.
Right.
But if we really need to make a decision, I'm going to make sure that you trust me and that you're okay with it, even though that I can pull the rank.
Right.
We're doing 49.
49, I know, right? And you had like
They're
the other 2% is crowdfunded.
We don't even know. Just somebody else has it.
Right. But it's just like, but not everything's like that. And it worked really well for a long time until like there was this idea of moving the business in a different direction. And like, it's stressful.
Yeah.
And like, not every business partner can handle this. Like I handle stress really well. then I can handle all these eccentricities. Like, how are we going to pay for this? How are we going to pay for that? I'm like, I'm just going to keep printing money in the basement.
Yeah.
Just like we've been doing.
Math.
And then at that point, like the part that our business partnership is, if you need capital, how do you get it? And then are you both going to go in on the same, or like, do you have, I always call it friends, fools, and family that are going to give you money? And there were some parts of it where I had way more friends, fools, and families than the other partner.
Right.
So then I was like, well, if something happens,
Yeah.
how do we get that back?
Yeah.
Sure.
And then I'm going to be on the line for it, but that person's not. So it's kind of like, just like my other business, I'm realizing like, oh my goodness, we're at 30,000 feet and we just lost both engines. Are there enough parachutes? And then how do you get out of it?
Yep.
And then essentially the other business partner got another business partner that I didn't know about.
Shit.
Yeah. Right. And they had money though. So I was like, all right, called my attorney back, the one that I had used prior.
Andre again.
Hey, Horton on line 2 again.
Yeah.
I was like,
The sugar business is not going good.
yeah, not advertising and then sugar. And I was like, I need, how much do you get an hour? How much is this phone call? He's a really good attorney, by the way. And I did find that out after so many lawsuits, like you get what you pay for.
Oh, yeah. I could see that.
Yeah. I wrote some big checks. I'm like, oh my goodness, during all these lawsuits. And his advice was like, just walk away.
Again.
I was like, again? You told me this last, wait a minute.
Yeah.
You're
Damn.
Like, are you going to, wait, again? There's no way.
I mean, I could do that job though,
Yeah.
too, you know?
It's like,
Just walk away.
and I couldn't, and like,
Yeah, it's going
like,
to be
the other business
30,000.
partner was an attorney. And I was like, ooh, I'm gonna get sued 40 ways to Sunday or whatever they say,
Yeah.
40 ways to Sunday every day, all the time until this is done, or no one has any more money.
Right.
And we've destroyed the brand
And
right.
each other. Yeah.
and each other. And it's like a small town. It's like a shootout in a small saloon. I didn't want to do it. I was like, not again.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so tired of this. And then I had these, like the Notebook. I run outside when it's raining and you're just screaming. Like, I had some spiritual.
What do you want?
Yeah. What do you want? And there were some spiritual parts to this that I absolutely hated. Like, and this is also I learned in my life too, that I think people think our creator can't handle our anger. Like, did you go outside and yell at God? I'm like, sure did. I was so angry that why would he let this happen to me twice? Right?
So you can learn.
He's big. He's big. He can take it.
You're going to be Job.
He can take it.
Right?
Yeah.
And I always think when we were raised, it's like this very pious and gracious thing. Like, dear God, it's okay.
Yeah.
And I was angry, but like part of my anger was like, why would you do this? Second time in a row. I'm an MBA. I've worked hard. The woe is me, self-pity, navel gazing. And then my wife came in one morning and I was still fighting. I'm like, oh yeah, there's no way I'm going to give this up. She's like, just let it go. And I just cracked, like just the full body shaking, weeping. Called the attorney. I was like, Art, settle. I'm out. And I walked away, just left the whole business for my business partner.
One more donut before you go kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing too is like the pastry chef
Just
was my friend. She wasn't a business partner.
yeah.
She was a friend. She's like, what's going on? I'm like, I can't tell you. She's
Make
like, what do
me
you mean
one
you
to
can't tell
go.
you?
Yeah.
I was like, I can't tell you. She's like, I think I know what's going on. I'm leaving.
Yeah.
And I think one of the key things I learned from that is I went on to do more business consulting, and some people are really nervous about sharing their business ideas with people. And I always tell people what I learned.
Steal them.
Yeah, they steal them.
Yeah, for sure.
And I was like, the thing I learned from that donut debacle was what we call borrowed vision. So like, if I'm going to like, tomorrow I'm going to call you and be like, hey man, I'm going to make a podcast and I'm going to come up with like a slightly different name than you guys and just call it, Andre's da-da-da-da. It's going to be called Borrowed Vision because I will never have the intellect, the passion for what you guys are doing to do this.
Right.
It will fail. And not if, but when it fails. Because I can't borrow your vision.
Right.
So people come in and talk to me about it. It's like, well, it's a secret, Andre. I don't want to tell anybody. I'm like, you can tell me because guess what? I don't want to do it. And if I did, it would fail.
Yeah.
Because I'm not wired like you are. I didn't have the same failures as you had. I was the fat little black kid that made it doing this, this, and this. But that story is my own. But I can't make my story work for your story.
Right.
And how you have this vision, how you have this passion to be who you are is a perfect journey no one else can duplicate. And I say everyone's got a story. And it's the coolest thing about humans is like, I can't be like, oh, my story is just like yours. No, it's not. It's so unique. You can't even beat it. So this whole borrowed vision thing is what I believed is someone assuming like, oh, I'm going to take this business they didn't found it. They didn't have the idea. They didn't go through the loss and sorrow of Golden Donuts.
Yeah.
That I
and
did.
the research,
The
everything that goes
research and
into
the
business.
passion and the branding and the hustle for
the
kinship.
branding was really good. I do remember the branding.
Oh man, Mike Kirkpatrick.
He was just
We
on here.
had him on
Oh, he was
here.
Yeti Designs.
Yep.
Dude, he
funny.
worked hours on
I
it.
just hired him to make me a logo, and
Yeah.
I have an email in my inbox right
Yeah,
now.
next level.
Love
I
it.
mean, then you would think you're like, well, why didn't I hire my own friends at Hewitt to do it, right?
Yeah.
And like, funny thing is like, there's different.
I didn't think that, but okay.
Yeah, like
Go
I
for
felt
it.
bad initially, like kind of shame, like maybe I should talk to my other friends and everything. But like Kirkpatrick he's like that. He uses typography.
Yeah.
You know.
Mike's great, man.
Yeah, he'd just come up with stuff. I'm like, dude, do it.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I'm a designer first before, almost before film. And like, dude, Mike's stuff, I'm just like, dude, how did you, okay, you know what? Like, I get it.
He's
really
creative
good.
zone, and like he did the golden, and then I'm like, dude, we got to figure out, can we get Dipper to fit in that? He's like, I can do it.
Yeah.
Showed him a picture of my
Solid.
buddy's butt with the Dipper. He's like, okay, I get it.
That's a nice butt.
Yeah, and, and the thing is, like, I talked to him specifically. I was like, "Here's what I want. I want to create a brand that looks like the donut shop you went to with your grandpa.
Oh,
You know, that whole
little
like
vision behind
Art
it.
Deco kind of, you know, and then it looks like a franchise, but not really.
Right.
But it looks like something that's been around for 60 years. Because you shouldn't
Check.
right, and you shouldn't start a plan, any business without an exit plan,
Right.
which was like, I'm gonna build this and then sell it, or build it and merge, or like that was my plan with Dipper, as I'm like 3 more stores and like do a wholesale side with Claudie, and then who knows where it goes. But no, because I think people, you know, this happened at Hewitt too, was like people have different outcomes they want in an exit.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the business partners like, well, I'm going to pass this on to my kids. And I was like, please no, because I'm a business partner, but I don't want to
Deal with your kids.
deal with your kids. Yeah. Not that they're not awesome kids, but that's 15 years from now.
Right.
So then it's like they watch too much Tron or something, you know, where
Yeah.
like, I'm going to pass this on. But then I can't fault them for wanting to pass along a legacy.
Right.
You know, but we also know that just because your parents did a cool job at a business doesn't mean that you're
That
gonna
skill
do it.
set
Yeah.
isn't
Right.
always
Yeah.
passed along.
Like, I don't want to do what dad did. But in the meantime, I will be at a detriment because I have to deal with the psychological ramifications of your kids not wanting to do what you want to do, but they're a business partner that I have to negotiate with.
Yeah.
So anyway, I mean, so I was going with that. It's just like this business partnership can be sticky, but I always built plans to exit before you start.
No.
Like, how do you want to exit? So if you guys even like, man, this could be
Yeah.
a national syndicated podcast. You know what I mean? And or it can just go way beyond what this is. But
Yeah.
it's cool to dream and have a vision for that, but also have an exit.
Sure. I already
is
got
smart.
mine.
I was gonna say, you got yours?
Yeah. Me and Jason, the operating agreement, you don't even need to see it.
We're going to buy out the other
Yeah.
2% that we can't figure out about.
Yeah. I love it.
But anyway, it was the demise of that brand a little bit. Looked like the borrowed vision idea.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't, you know, not to say that I'm the only OxyClean guy around, but like I lived, breathed that brand and the passion for building the business. And that's the part in hindsight, like they can't take away.
Yeah, I love that.
Like it was cool to like start with, we didn't even open and we had like 4,000 followers. We had people pounding on the doors.
I remember.
We sold out of donuts and like by 10. I mean, we'd be
Yeah.
there at 4 a.m., but
But you didn't open.
I remember
Yeah.
the big buzz around Dipper Donuts.
Yeah.
I just like remember being like, well, what's going on here? Why is it, wow, this is local? Okay.
yeah, local.
And
like,
I do remember
organic
thinking,
ingredients. Like
it's funny. I was like, oh, there's a franchise. I do remember
yeah.
thinking that because
Winning.
I was big into branding
Right.
at that
Wanted.
time. Still am, but like I was big into branding. And I was like, this isn't local, but no, it was. And that's another thing too. Like Alaska, I think we've had like when we had Mike on, I was like, you know, Alaska, when it comes to design stuff, we don't really spend that much time or spend that much money. It's like, make it in Word, right?
Right.
Clippy can make it.
Yeah.
Like,
Fiverr.
yeah, Fiverr or like 99 Designs, which I am guilty of back in the day for sure. But like when someone actually puts time and effort into like a local business and it's really well branded and you're like, whoa, something's up here.
Right.
Something's going on.
I would have to say he spent a lot of time. I mean, the amount of money, like a usual logo cost, and then there's the logo he created for Dipper and for Golden.
Yeah.
Like, and some parts of me are like, he came up with it kind of fast. I'm like, oh, he must have got someone in the Philippines to like come up with a preliminary, And I feel horrible thinking that the first time.
Smart Mike.
But he did it.
That's what he did.
He sketched out this like he had like the vellum paper and like the whole. I felt horrible thinking he would even do that, but he did that from scratch.
I've seen it because we had a meeting not too long ago. He's got his field notes notebook just filled with little sketches.
Right.
That's what we were doing. We were just sitting there, and I was telling him my idea of this like brand that I'm building, and he's like, "Okay, so we could do this and we could do that." And I
He's
was
a
like,
real deal.
Hell yeah, man! I love it. I fucking love that.
Slam
shit.
his book down and leave. I'm like, okay, I guess that. Talk to you later.
Yeah,
I'll bill you.
Yeah. But he did an amazing work, and I'd use him again in a heartbeat.
Okay, so we've taken up a lot of your time.
Oh, my time. Oh, this has been great. It flew by. We only got the donuts.
I know. That's the thing. And I mean, we did talk about what you're doing now a little bit, like in kind of the beginning. And there's so much, and I think we'll definitely have to have a part 2. We're definitely realizing with a lot of these guests is like we don't even hit like the like, oh well, there's actually like multiple people that we've had on recently, and it's like, oh, we didn't even get to like the religion aspect because we love talking about that stuff. And so like even you said it earlier in the podcast, like we could talk about that one topic for a podcast or that one topic for a podcast. So we could do it for a long time. But okay, so you've done all these things. You're a fireman now, which is freaking awesome. I think
It's fun.
What's next? Give a little Go Fix Yourself exclusive.
When I left Dipper and I was doing all this stuff, I had these Post-it notes I wrote all over my everything that would say, do it again. And I said these stickers that say, do it again, do it again.
Meaning?
Do it again. Like,
Just
don't
like
let
anything.
like a business, I wouldn't call it a failure. It's easy for us to look at like the fourth grader and be like, I'm not the smartest kid in the room. Andre, look at the entirety of your life. I wouldn't say it was a failure. You just had a whole lot of hiccups and missed 3-pointers, but you still are winning to some degree. Like I'm still here. I'm still enjoying my life. Right. So it's not necessarily a loss.
Little Andre, you got sued 40 times.
Look
at you.
Like how many times
at you.
I remember one lawsuit, like the amount we spent on attorney fees was far beyond what we even got.
Oh man.
One of those.
Isn't that how it goes?
Never been there.
Yeah. I was like, wait, we paid this guy $30,000. We got $6,000 back.
I'm getting his attorney. I'm gonna get.
I'll get different donuts, guys.
Yeah, he is good.
Yeah, see?
He walks in like an attorney in the movies. I'm like, oh, look at that briefcase.
Damn.
I paid for that.
Maybe
anyway.
a little maybe a little too big suit, or it's either a little too big or it's just perfectly tailored.
Yeah. There's like 2 lobbies to the, the first
To
lobby
get
and then
to
the
him.
second lobby and then, a lot of glass.
Glass. There's a waterfall in there.
Yeah, waterfall.
Koi pond.
It's everything.
Yeah.
They charge for paper clips, but they're good paper clips. So anyway, these stickers will have like, do it again. And there's this weird parable that maybe you guys would understand is when there's people out fishing in the Sea of Galilee and Jesus yells at them like, throw your nets on the other side.
Yeah.
I think if I was a dirty fisherman, I'd be like, you know what?
Screw you.
What are you talking about? There's some guy in a toga out there telling me to put my net on the other side of the boat.
Yeah.
I've been out here all night. Don't tell me what to do.
Why don't you walk out here and tell me that?
Yeah, right?
Oh my God.
Dude, he's walking. I knew it. We didn't apologize for it.
Walk out here.
Why don't you walk out here? And
that would be a funny video.
And
Why don't you come say that to my face?
they've got whiskey out there. You know what? You come out here, you tell me, Jesus.
They had something.
Yeah, right?
I'm sure.
So then they're like, okay, fine. We're going to take our nets out and put them on the other side of the boat. They were like,
And then we got
they were
capsized.
so angry, and then we got capsized.
Yeah.
And it's this mere idea of surrender to like, all right, okay. Like, I'll try it one more time. Do it again. Just because I believe that I've never been let down. Like, I've been sued. I've lost businesses. I'm still here.
Right.
So I'm like, okay. I'll put my nets in their side of the boat and see what happens. That's the do it again part.
Right. So it's more like it's not so much the destination for you. It's the journey of trying things over and over again. Little nuances here of new things, but is it just liking the idea of creating something out of nothing, essentially, like the business world is?
Yeah.
And it doesn't sound like it matters what it is. Yeah. It's just creating something.
Right. And so, and the funny thing is, working at the fire department gives me like how our hours are, I have lots of time to like look out the window and be like, I'm gonna do it again.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the coolest, freeing part about the job. It's still a full-time job. Like we work 3,000 hours a year, but how the hours are structured, I have time to think.
Right.
And plan.
You
and
brainstorm.
Okay. I have a thick journal of ideas. And then in the meantime, like the side hustles I've created already are starting to materialize. So like,
Can you tell us
Oh,
what
yeah.
some of them are?
You guys know what Ritchie Brothers are? Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, the auctioneers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was out, I have some land in Willow and I kept renting excavators to like build my lot, cut trees down. And I was renting excavators every weekend. I'm like, man, this is getting expensive. So I'm driving past Ritchie Brothers. And I'm like, man, there's excavators there. I drive in there. Don't tell my wife again. And there's all these old guys with like Kenworth hats on, doing an auction. I'm like, man, that's just like the one I have. I started walking through and I'm going to go register and see what happens. I win an excavator for $12,000.
Okay. Not bad.
Yeah. And I was like, man, this thing is sweet.
Yeah.
Not bad.
I have no idea how to move it or operate it.
Yeah.
But I was renting them. So I'm like, yeah, it's a little John Deere. I can figure it out. And go home and tell my wife, I'm like, okay, here's what happened. Borrowed a little bit of our money.
Somebody kidnapped me and made me buy
Made
this.
me buy an excavator.
Crazy.
And I had like a trailer. So I go back to Ritchie Brothers to pick it up. And everyone's looking like, dude, you see that black guy over there? He's going to try to load that excavator into that trailer.
Yeah.
And he has
And
no
you're
idea
like,
what
I'm
he's
gonna
doing.
Show them.
Yeah, I'm going to show them my pride and ego. Oh, yeah. Dude, my truck comes off the ground in the front and it starts rolling.
Oh, my God.
And all these guys are like, and everyone's kind of standing back. So I start rolling towards everyone else's stuff.
Oh, no.
And I was like, I think if I go forward faster, my back tires on my truck will stop.
Right.
So I keep driving and it
Science.
stops. But then the whole point of my ego and pride, I get out and look and I'm like, what? I do that every time.
I had it under control.
I had it under control. It does that every time.
Typical Friday.
So I started this excavator, and then my buddies were like, hey, you got an excavator? I'm like, yeah. Can you come do this thing? And as a business person, I wouldn't say I hate it, but I try not to sell my hours. Because you only have so many hours a day. You want to have like a product.
Right.
It's like you can sleep at night and you're making money, cash flow. Look at that.
Passive income.
Passive income. But Alaska, this is the craziest thing, is like we're just different. Like sometimes we have to find things that work. So right now I have this excavator and a dump bed, essentially. So then I'm like, okay, I need a bigger trailer. Found a bigger trailer. Then I went to Ritchie Brothers in Bakersfield, California. And
Okay,
I'm
you're
like,
getting
I need
real
a
time.
semi-tractor. That's what I'm going to do.
Honey, I got kidnapped again.
Yeah, I got kidnapped again.
They flew me.
No, Tara, I was like, my wife Tara. I was like, Tara, I won. She's like, there's no such thing as winning an auction.
Yeah.
This means
But
you have to pay.
No, you weren't there.
I got a good deal.
You
She's
weren't
like,
there.
what kind of deal is this? I'm like, it's a semi-tractor. It's got 200,000 miles on it. It's in Bakersfield, and I paid $12,000 again.
Not bad.
Right.
Not bad.
So I fly down to Bakersfield, California. And that snowpocalypse happened in California.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm driving.
Oh, that was recently then.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I drive it up, and I'm driving through Redding, California. I'm like, where is this snow?
yeah.
And like,
I must be back in Alaska.
yeah, everyone starts going off the road because there's black ice. I pull into a hotel. I'm like, I'm stopped. This is good. Open the door the next day, and there's just snow, like feet of
my
snow.
God.
This is like a farm town. So my fuel gelled, like couldn't start the truck.
Oh, no.
And I'm thinking I'm going to drive it up the Elcan. No, I go to Seattle, put it on the barge. Like, enough of that. So I have a semi tractor that pulls the excavator now.
Oh.
So it's like a dirt
man.
work company, because
What are you calling it? Dipper
works.
Dipper excavator?
I got in an argument with the state of Alaska because I wanted to call it DRT.works.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
And people are like, that sounds like a lot of other companies.
Yeah.
Like,
Sounds like every other company.
yeah. So then I was like, how about we just change it to DRT? So my wife is a graphic designer. She made these cool logos.
Oh,
So it's
heck
just
yeah.
called DRT, which, I mean, unofficially, that looks like dirt.
Dirt.
Yeah. But I convinced the state of Alaska to do just DRT.
What's your domain name?
DRT.works.
Nice.
We're dirt.
Yeah.
We're DRT.
We do dirt work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not
Dirt
up
works.
yet. So that's the other thing. I have to like finish the website. But like that's
That's the new thing.
I
That's the
try
passion
not to like
project right now.
It was
crazy,
it was
man.
a cash thing. Like, man, I need a side hustle because I want to clear my land.
Yeah.
Then I got the thing, and now people are like, "Can people put this culvert in for me? Can you put a pad in? I need an RV pad for my toys." You know.
Yeah. I mean, that's how it happens though, right?
Right.
That's how freak, dude. I was like, when I was talking about YouTube,
Yeah.
I was doing YouTube just as a fun thing. And then people were like, oh, can you make my business a video? And I was like,
There you go.
I guess, yeah. It's going to be $500 bucks.
And I would have never thought like I'm not Johnny Farmer excavator, but I've always been really good with equipment of any time. Like when I was building Dipper, I was like,
like when you like put the excavator in your truck, like you're really good.
Yeah, you're good. Come on. Everyone's watching. They're like holding their cameras up like they're trying to film me, just making me onto YouTube.
Yeah,
this is going on.
It's going on World Star.
Yeah. But entrepreneurship's fun because you just got to figure it out.
Yeah.
I love it.
I do love entrepreneurship. I'm a big advocate. And it's funny because my friends, we were at Willowall one night and they were all like talking on the table. And then I was talking to, this side of the table. And then I joined the other side and they're like, oh, we're just talking about how you want all of us to start our own businesses and you won't shut up about it. And I'm like, honestly,
you could pay me.
Thank you.
But don't you think it's possible? Like almost like if you look at our economy right now, like you had to like these Jerry Springer final thoughts. Like the amount of businesses that support our GDP, for instance, are millions and millions and millions of small businesses, not GE, not Ford.
Right.
It's all the mom and pops.
Yep.
All these small businesses.
Little guys.
Like we have more mass than anybody else. But I also believe everyone's got a story. And that correlates to like if I could give you the right training, if I could convince you that you have an entrepreneurship vein in your body, would you embrace it? And that's one thing, like that's Americanism, like as I call it. Like that is very unique to Americans. Like you're an entrepreneur. And I understand that. I always tell people like the people that know how work for the people that know why. There's always someone out there that's the how person, but then there's also the whys. And I'm a how person when I work for the fire department. I don't know why, because I'm just a firefighter. But then there's engineers, there's captains, senior captains, battalion chiefs, all the way up. So I just like, Horton, go put the fire out. I'm like, okay, I can do that. But they're the why. But in entrepreneurship, I can convince people that you could also be a why.
Right.
But you have to know what your passion is. And my passion, believe me, is probably not dirt work excavation. But my passion to like fulfill a need and work with heavy equipment is.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to start Hickle Construction 2.0.
Make some money.
Yeah. Like I want to make some money and do some cool retaining walls and culverts.
Yeah.
And like a lot of it goes back to the small business part of me. Like I want my kids to see that, hey, you don't have to go,
stereotypical school, college.
Don't have to fit the
career.
the
trades. Like
on the square.
I have a buddy who's a welder. I guarantee you his total amount of income he's made over his career compared to mine, given my academic route, is far surpassed. I mean, I've been sued a whole bunch and all that stuff, but like
Minus
just
those.
continuous
You've got experience.
Right.
Yeah, the trades are they're coming out on top lately.
We used to like, we're going to go to King Career Center.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah.
It used to be frowned upon.
Right.
Now
Small
it's like,
engine.
oh, you're going to make some bank now.
Yeah. I know a guy who runs a small
gonna be a
engine
welder?
shop. He's like, I can't help you. Why not? He's like, look, you look back and he's like, oh my goodness, that goes way back. That goes like 3 acres of small engines back there he has to work on. So in Alaska, that's the coolest thing about us is like, we're outliers. We have to kind of be very creative and like, I would have never thought about donuts in Low 48 because there's other things that I could probably aspire to, but up here I was forced to have to kind of consider that.
Yeah.
Same with podcasts.
Right.
I mean, like, oh, we're not in Low 48. We're not super sexy in LA. No. We've got crazy people that will make amazing stories up here.
Very sexy.
Yeah, you guys just have
Sexy.
to. You guys are finding them. That's the thing.
Yeah. I think one thing, I mean, I always tell people about Alaska, and I've said it on here before, is like Alaska has opportunity because, you go down to the nearest big city, say Seattle, and there's, 1 million people and 100 miles trying to do the same thing you're doing. Maybe the same exact thing you're doing. I always, I'm a filmmaker, so it's like I always, go from personal experience, but I moved down to Seattle and then there's a ton of me.
Yeah,
and
it's
like
ultra competitive.
It very much so. And so for me, it's like it would be a harder grind to get up. Or I can stay in Alaska, build my, brand, whatever it is, donuts or filmmaking or whatever, dancing, I don't care. Yeah. And like you
carve
build
out
it,
a niche.
you build it up here and you have the opportunity because there is not many. There's like literally for filmmakers, and this is what I know, is like there's 15 of us.
Yeah, I was like, I can count them on my hands, the ones that I actually know.
Exactly. There's not many.
Right.
And so I think that's the beautiful thing about Alaska is like, you can do donuts because we don't have a Dunkin' Donuts.
Right.
We don't have really a Denny's, It's like we don't really have that like breakfast spa or whatever. So like donuts is possible to do this.
Right.
And that's the cool thing about Alaska.
I would go back to Golden if they took me.
Yeah.
I think that brand's like going back to this, like there's lots of brands in Alaska that have been around a long time that are nearing their terminal date. Not to say that they can just get refreshed by someone new,
Right.
exciting,
They
like,
just need renewal.
yeah,
is
like
what
what's
you're-
Tim Gravel going to do in 10 years?
Mm.
Like someone else might take the reins. I'm like, I'd buy Kaladi. Can I
Yeah.
afford it? No.
No.
But I mean, that's a cool, I love brands. Right?
Yeah,
That's a
Kaladi
brand.
would be dope.
Right.
I would.
We'll all go in on
Yeah,
it.
we will.
10 years.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
We'll sue you.
We'll take that. Yeah. Sue me.
First off.
The other 2%, the 49 and 49.
Tim, listen.
Here's how we're going to do this.
Michelle.
I empty out my pocket.
I want to be the lucky number 45 for suing Andre.
Well, I mean, and the funny
I'm
thing
gonna
is,
write a
like,
number on this piece
there's
of
been
paper.
cool firms in Alaska that end up being ESOPs because they don't know what to do.
Right.
Like, they don't know how to, like, what are we going to do? Let's be an ESOP. Like, please, no. Like, let someone come in who has a brain and is super excited about your brand. It's good.
Yeah. Well, man, I think that's a great note to end it on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you
Pleasure.
so much for coming on.
This
It was cool to see you guys again.
This
too.
was
Yeah.
amazing.
2010. I mean,
It's been a while.
I
you
have
two.
changed.
yeah.
I mean, have you? No, man, really, this was amazing. Pleasantly, like I had my eyes. I was kind of quiet for some of the times because I was just like, "What?" Like you tell stories great. Like
thanks.
you're very personable person. We just met basically for the first time.
You're a stranger.
Exactly. And like I was just like I was so drawn to you. So thank you for coming in and sharing your stories and sharing where you're headed and where you are and what you've learned along the way, man. It was very inspiring.
Thanks for having me on the show. It's like I'm looking forward to where it goes, and you guys are doing great. This is gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
I think it will be too. This might be our biggest podcast episode yet.
Everybody stay tuned for part 2.
Yeah.
America.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's good.
Thanks for tuning in. Kyle and Steven will be back with a new episode next week. In the meantime, check out gofixyourselfpodcast.com. And remember to always go fix yourself.